He was exiled from his homeland, offered as a sacrifice to the demons. But instead of death, he found something else: respect, freedom, and a workshop like no other. Now, this kind-hearted alchemist is building miracles in the demon realm. Every formula is a step toward the future he wants. Can the world he left behind handle what he's about to create? Let's find out. This story begins in the mansion of Duke Rigus. Barca Rigus, the father of the protagonist named Thor Rigus, informed him that it had been decided that the great empire of Bulgaria would send him to another country as a hostage. The protagonist was surprised. What did he say? His father continued that the carriage had already arrived. He thought that it was an insignificant sacrifice for the glory of the Rigus family. Thor was surprised to think that this was the first thing he had heard from his father in the last 3 years. He said that he did not understand why he had to go to another country. Barca said angrily, "It would be better if he were dead." Thor could not believe his ears. What did his father say? One of his father's confidants could not hold back his laughter at these words. The protagonist thought sadly, why? After all, he had broken off relations with the Duke's family. At the age of 13, he found a job and left home. He lived as a commoner and did not intend to return to the Duke's house. 3 years had passed since then. Right while he was working, his father's soldiers broke in and dragged him home without any explanation. And now, his father tells him this. He shouted that he had already said it once. Their family does not need anyone who does not have combat skills. The Duke called out to the captain of the guard, the butler, and ordered him to report his son's misdeed. The captain readily reported that when the protagonist was 10 years old, he passed a skill test in the temple, and he did not have any combat skill. This is unacceptable for the eldest son of the Duke's family. Another subordinate of the father noted that at 12 years old, the protagonist had a second skill test. A magical skill was detected, but it has nothing to do with offensive skills. This is unacceptable for an aristocrat. The rest of the court servants began to support their allies. Each of them noted that this was a disgrace to the nobility. Thor must be removed from the country as soon as possible. This is unforgivable. He cannot stay here any longer. Barca said with annoyance that they had high hopes for him when he was born. Their family had a long history of possessing powerful combat techniques, and his son was supposed to lead this empire one day. Despite this, he had disappointed them. He didn't have a single combat skill. He couldn't use offensive magic either. The eldest son of a duke whose grandfather was a holy sword had turned into this. Did he even understand what it was like for the parents of such a child? The protagonist thought dejectedly that this was the fate of someone who had no combat skills. Thanks to their military might, the Bulgaria Empire had been able to greatly expand its territory. His Highness, the first emperor, was also an ordinary brave warrior who fought for their empire at first. Therefore, everyone highly valued combat skills, regardless of class, especially aristocrats who always had more powerful skills. Therefore, everyone looked down on an aristocrat without combat skills. The protagonist bowed before his father and said, indeed, he does not have the necessary skills, but he does have the skill, alchemy. Thor, already irritated, continued that his alchemy skill allows him to repair and restore items. At the moment, he is in charge of items in a government agency. In the future, he will be able to create items himself if he hones this skill. And also, he is saving money so that he can open his own workshop. The Duke slammed his fist and shouted at him to shut up. Everything he says is ridiculous. The protagonist, barely holding back his anger, said, "What did he say?" The father mockingly continued that the empire has a holy sword and a holy shield created by heroes. When 2 of the strongest items exist, he is going to create a new one? Let him not laugh. The Duke broke the table in rage and continued that he will be sent away as a hostage, and this is not up for discussion. Thor thought with despair that they are not going to listen to him. At least he should try to get information. Thor told his father he understood that his father's decision was final, but what did he mean by insignificant sacrifice? Barca was silent for a moment, and then said that he would be going to rather dangerous lands. That's what? The protagonist was surprised. Dangerous lands? The Duke told him that the Empire had sent hostages many times, but they all went missing. Not a single one returned. The protagonist, not fully believing his assumption, asked the Duke, were we talking about the lands of the Demon King Ruki Everhard? Barca told him that his insight was his only virtue. The father added, although if he really were insightful, he should have ended his life long ago. Thor thought with irritation. He didn't care what his father thought of him. Was he really going to send him to the demons? He said out loud. He didn't know that the Empire was conducting a cultural exchange with the demons. The Duke already more calmly added, according to rumors, the demons are very bloodthirsty. They must somehow coexist with them. Therefore, every few years they appease them. The Duke's subordinate noted that the demons are like animals. They are happy that they can kill people, thereby proving their superiority. The protagonist doomedly understood that this is why his words do not reach them. They really wanted him dead. The father said that the conversation with him was over. He could disappear. Immediately after that, he pushed him so hard that Thor flew to the side. Without turning around, the Duke ordered his subordinates to take Thor away. The protagonist shouted with hatred at his father's back that he hated him. Barca angrily replied that he was already dead, and dead people do not talk. That's how the protagonist was exiled from his home country. He was taken away on a cart accompanied by guards. MC, sitting on a bench, was overcome by sad thoughts. Once upon a time, the demon kingdom was at odds with humanity. Several hundred years ago, a war for territory broke out between demons and humans. The powerful army of the Demon King invaded the southern domains. At that time, humans summoned a hero from another world. Ruki and his army were strong, however, the hero was not inferior to them. It was a fierce battle, but the humans managed to gain the upper hand and expel the Demon King. After that, a strict border was drawn between the demons and the human world. The lands in the south began to be called the human world, and what stretched beyond the forest in the north was the Demon Kingdom. After the border appeared, no serious conflicts arose. However, they say that demons hate humans because of their exile to the north. Nothing is known about the Demon Kingdom yet. The protagonist noticed that the windows in the carriage were boarded up, so nothing could be seen through them. His guard consists of about 20 guards. In addition to them, there are several cavalrymen. Even if he tries to escape, he will be caught immediately. That is why he did not want to get involved with the Duke's family. After all, he almost managed to break ties with them. He passed the state exams, signing with his mother's surname. He was accepted to a job where he was responsible for paperwork and servicing some artifacts. In the Empire, a civil servant is someone who could not even become an adventurer. He had a low salary, and employees of other departments laughed at him, and yet he was happy. After all, he could use alchemy. The protagonist remembered his last job. He was servicing one sword. The maintenance of that weapon is still not finished. If only he could, he would return it to perfect condition. But now that will not happen. His father's words that he was already dead were pulsating in his head. The protagonist grinned and took out 3 spoons. This is what he stole, taking advantage of the soldiers' inattention. The protagonist looked at them and used alchemy activation. In an instant, the spoons turned into metal, from which Thor created a knife. This was his alchemy skill. With it, he could transform various materials such as metal and create new items. The concept of the skill name included the purification of materials, synthesis. Processing the material allowed you to create new items by synthesizing materials. This skill also allows you to evaluate the alchemical properties of materials. He still had room for improvement. He was going to master this skill perfectly, and then open his own workshop and call it Alchemist Thor. Therefore, he could not allow himself to die in the realm of the Demon Lord. At that moment, Thor heard one of the guards say that they will soon be at the border. Everyone, be on guard. After some time, the carriage stopped. The door opened, and the escort informed the protagonist that they had arrived. The protagonist got out of the carriage and looked into the distance. The road that leads to the Empire ends here, at this place where they stopped. And with it, the territory of people ends. Ahead is a black forest. This must be the border between the two worlds. He mockingly asked the guards what their next plan was. Who is the lucky one who will lead him to the demons? Maybe they will meet them themselves? Or are they going to continue to just stand there, rooted to the spot? The head guard ordered the archer to fire a signal arrow. The archer readily followed the order. Suddenly, the aura changed, and silhouettes appeared ahead. The guards began to whisper that demons had appeared. The protagonists stared in amazement at the newcomers. They were enormous creatures, and next to them was a girl, Mabel Refrain. Compared to them, she seemed the size of an ant. She looked at her next victim with a smirk. The monsters also glared at the protagonist. The protagonist was sweating from the tension. It was the first time he had seen someone like that. They were minotaurs and an elf. The guards who accompanied the protagonist knelt before the fierce demons. Thor advanced to meet the newcomers, which surprised the people accompanying him. He decided that he needed to make a good impression on the creatures meeting him. He politely said that he came from the Dulgaria Empire. His name was Thor. The protagonist hoped to wait for the right moment and escape, and for this he wanted to lull the demon's vigilance. The girl curtsied and told him that her name was Mabel Refrain. She was an elf. She was glad to welcome him to the lands of the Demon Lord. The girl added that, by order of the Demon King, she had come here to escort him. The protagonist was surprised to think how polite she was. It did not seem like they were treating him like a hostage or a victim. Meanwhile, the guards were perplexedly talking to each other. Was he completely crazy? Approaching demons closely and unarmed was the height of stupidity. Thor told them that they had only been greeted politely. Let them try to respond in kind. One of the guards indignantly insulted him as a moron and added that he knew nothing. With the help of their spells, elves are capable of burning 10 people in one attack, and the minotaurs are so strong that they could easily squeeze the brains out of him. Why would they approach this gathering? Is he out of his mind? One must always be on one's guard. The protagonist noted that the definition of a gathering suited them better. He thought that they had been carrying him around in a cart like cattle all this time, and had not even tried to say anything. Even the demons had been more polite. The protagonist turned to the demons and apologized for the rudeness of his escorts. He continued that he was the eldest son of Duke Rigus, and by order of His Highness the Emperor, he had to disturb these lands with his arrival. He knew practically nothing about their state, so he asked them to forgive him if he accidentally behaved rudely. Mabel stepped towards him and said with surprise that she had never heard such a polite greeting from someone from the Empire. Since the lands of the Demon Lord were in the very north, there were many places that were difficult to reach, but she hoped he would like it there. She is pleased to meet Mr. Messenger. The astonished protagonist replied that he was also pleased to meet her. He thought that he would leave the escape for later. First, he would conduct reconnaissance. The head guard, in a voice stuttering with fear, asked Mabel to sign the papers on the transfer of the messenger. The protagonist sarcastically remarked, "Messenger?" Well, he would not say, "victim." When the girl signed the necessary papers, she said that this was the end of the protagonist's transfer. She turned to the protagonist and said that from here they would have to go through the forest, and in places the road could be difficult. Therefore, they prepared assistants who, if necessary, could carry both him and his things. The demons, raising their hands up, told him to leave the transportation of the baggage to them. The guards watched in amazement. They perceived the demons' attack as a threat. The head guard shouted to his comrades to run. The demons are breaking the non-aggression pact. They will kill them. They need to run. And all the guards ran away from the place where they handed over the protagonist. The protagonist exhaled loudly. Mabel turned to him and said that, apparently, he was not afraid of them at all. She had never met such a brave man. Thor noted that he would not call it bravery. But after all, there was a non-aggression pact between humans and demons. And showing fear without an obvious reason would be, at the very least, impolite. And that's how it all happened. Now, he was walking through the forest accompanied by minotaurs who kindly helped him where it was difficult to come alone. Mabel warned him that if he got tired, he should tell her about it. Thor thought that if you compare them with the Imperial soldiers, it was like heaven and earth. He smiled at the girl and told her that he was fine. The protagonist noted that it was difficult to move around this area, but surprisingly, he did not feel tired at all. By the way, as soon as they entered the demon territory, his health improved significantly. For some reason, he felt a strange magical energy. He did not feel this in the Empire's territory, and now, this energy was overflowing him. The system notified him that the absorption of the magical energy of the dark element was complete. Together with the elements of light, earth, water, fire, and wind, the absorption of the 6 basic magical elements was complete. His alchemy skill was replaced by the high alchemy skill. The material preparation skill was fully awakened. The attribute addition skill was also fully awakened, as was the appraisal skill. He wondered in surprise, what was that? He asked the system to show his skills. High alchemy was available to him, which had the highest rank, was only available after absorbing the 6 basic magical elements. Also, along with this skill, the creation of equivalents based on information about the abilities and appearance of objects was available. Another skill was material preparation. It allowed one to create materials using one's own magical power. Synthesis and creation of new materials were available. Materials could be processed and given the desired shape. The materials available for creation depended on the level. Next, he had 2 more skills available. These were attribute addition, in which he could add any attributes to the materials being created. However, the number of attributes that could be added depended on the material. The evaluation skill gave the protagonist the ability to evaluate the attributes, material, and properties of an item. The information obtained during the evaluation was recorded in the skill. The protagonist, having read all this, was surprised. Had the alchemy skill evolved? In addition, he could now create materials using only his mana. The protagonist did not believe, did such a skill really exist? If it was indicated in the description, then it was indeed possible. However, this was even too convenient. He could only assume that due to his lack of combat skills, all his abilities went into the higher alchemy skill. Mabel, seeing the protagonist's confusion, asked him if something was wrong. She asked him to tell her if he suddenly felt unwell. Because the magical energy in the lands of people and demons is very different. Therefore, his health could deteriorate sharply. Thor was surprised. Magical energy? He asked the girl, isn't the demon territory the main element is darkness? Mabel said that he was absolutely right. She asked him, and for people, on the contrary, the main element is light, isn't it? The protagonist confirmed that this is exactly so. In addition, fire and earth also prevail in the Empire. Fire represents the power to fight invaders, and earth represents indestructibility. Suddenly, a guess struck the protagonist. The girl looked at him in surprise. Thor realized that his skill had awakened because he had absorbed the element of darkness in the lands of demons. The protagonist knew that in the lands of people, the element of light prevails over darkness. Here, everything is the opposite. Darkness reigned over light. Before that, he was in the imperial capital, and could not accumulate the element of darkness in sufficient quantity. And to awaken the highest alchemy, it was necessary to absorb all 6 basic elements. Having stepped onto the lands of demons, the protagonist absorbed a large amount of dark energy. Thus, the condition for awakening the highest alchemy was fulfilled. This is what happened to him. At that moment, one of the centaurs turned to the protagonist and Mabel. He told them that from here the road becomes uneven. Let them be more careful. They thanked him for the warning. At that moment, the girl's foot fell off the edge of the road, and she almost fell down. The protagonist managed to catch her, but her chain caught on a branch and broke. When everyone calmed down, the girl looked sadly at her pendant. One of the centaurs turned to her sadly and said that her necklace had broken. She answered him sadly. It seemed that she had gotten caught on a branch. The centaurs apologized to her. They should have been more careful. Mabel objected that it was nothing serious. The chain was initially slightly broken. The centaur said that she treasured the necklace very much because her mother had given it to her. The girl, continuing to examine her pendant, reassured them that everything was fine, so they should not worry. The protagonist asked her if he could try to fix it. He had fixed broken chains many times. Mabel was surprised at what he said. So he was a craftsman? Thor hesitated with an answer. In the Empire, he could not even be called an alchemist. The only work he did was fixing objects using his skill. He did not have his own alchemy workshop, so he could not accept orders. However, this had always been his dream. So he answered the girl that he was an alchemist. He had always waited for this moment. He repeated that he was an alchemist. Thor Rigus, would she trust him to fix her chain? The girl and the centaurs stared at him in amazement. Mabel asked him with embarrassment. Could she really ask a favor of their guest? The protagonist assured her that everything was fine. She handed him a pendant and a chain, saying that this pendant had been passed down in her family for generations, a keepsake from her mother. Since it could be repaired, she asked him to do it. The protagonist took the decoration and told her that he would do everything in his power. Stepping aside, he sat down, opened his palm, and activated the highest alchemy. First, MC called for an appraisal. With its help, he realized that this pendant with a water spirit stone was blessed by the water spirits. It was made of a water magic stone, was damaged, the details were unknown. The chain itself was made of an unknown metal. The system was collecting data on this metal. The durability of the decoration was reduced due to old scratches. Thor understood everything. The chain was worn out, that's why it broke. And some details are unknown and it is missing links. The protagonist thought that it would be enough if he simply added the water attribute when creating. The system informed him that the preparation of materials was activated. Thor closed his eyes and thought that metals were born from the earth. This statement is true for any metal. With the help of the preparation of materials, he could create metal using magical power. He needed to imagine how mana was poured in, and then as if stir it. At that moment, the system informed him that the repair of the jewelry was complete. Centaurs looked at him in bewilderment and asked the girl how this could be possible. The chain became whole again? Mabel was as amazed as her assistants. Metal. He created it from nothing. The protagonist noted that the centaurs were very surprised. To tell the truth, he himself was surprised too. He did not think that the preparation of materials really creates material only from mana. Is this the power of higher alchemy? The protagonist gave the jewelry to the girl and told her that everything was ready. The protagonist added that this was the first maintenance, so there could be flaws. Later, he would inspect it again. Mabel, not believing her eyes, examined her jewelry. MC noticed her reaction and thought something was wrong. She said his name and thanked him happily. Her mother's pendant was now as good as new. Thor thought, as good as new? Maybe it was because he fixed the broken part of the chain? He answered her out loud that she didn't have to thank him. The girl noted with admiration, he must be a very famous alchemist. The centaurs also expressed their gratitude to him. He fixed it so easily, even the dwarves couldn't do it. An amazing person had come to them. The protagonist was amazed and thought that he was experiencing strange feelings. It was the first time he had received such gratitude for using his skill. In the Empire, his skill was considered useless and ridiculed. His own father considered him a non-entity and wanted him dead. Now he understood. So this is how alchemists feel in the world outside the Empire? He looked at the girl and thought, fixing something that was very dear to someone, seeing their happy smiles, it made him happy too. Maybe that's why the alchemist he read about in history books honed his skill? He heard that before the era of heroes, creating items such as magic swords and shields was a common thing for alchemists. Perhaps alchemists created more and more new items, trying to eliminate the mistakes of the previous ones. The girl brought him out of his thoughts and asked him to call her by name. The protagonist laughed and told her that, then, he can't wait for her to show him everything here. Mabel noted that it would be no problem for alchemist Thor. And so his new life began, the life of alchemist Thor. Then they were already moving in a carriage. The protagonist, looking around, thought, so this is what the lands of the Lord of Demons look like. Endless plains stretched outside the window. In the distance, there was a wide river with ships sailing along it. Thor looked closely and was surprised. There were fishermen walking on the decks of the ships. The protagonist activated his magic power and saw so many different creatures. He noticed that there seemed to be a lot of different inhabitants here. He thought that in the Empire, these lands were called the domains of chaos. They say that a person, not having time to set foot on this land, will immediately be devoured by monsters, and they also say that demons kidnap people. In fact, everything was different. Everyone here lives an ordinary life, and the atmosphere here is much more peaceful than in the Empire. The girl explained to him that in order to compensate for the lack of hands, each resident here does everything in his power. The reason is that the lands of the Lord of Demons are sparsely populated. Soon he will be able to get a job here too. Mabel asked him if he had already thought about what he would like to do. He asked in surprise if he had to. Of course, he had thought a lot about what he would like to do. He was puzzled. It was all strange. After all, he was sent here as a hostage. The protagonist turned to the girl and said he had heard that people had been sent here before. Where were they now? Mabel thought about it and then replied that it was about 50 years ago. She had not yet been born, so she had only heard rumors. It seemed that the previous one who arrived here went home almost immediately. The protagonist was surprised. Went home? She replied that it was so, because he did not find a suitable job for himself here. But trying to go through this forest alone is very dangerous. They wanted to see him off, but in the end, he just secretly left alone. The protagonist was amazed. That's how it was. Now everything fell into place in his head. In the lands of the demon lords, they believe that guests and messengers come to them. Therefore, they are treated with respect. In the Empire, everything is different. They send people as hostages and victims. That is why they try to escape. They fled, ignoring the order, so they did not return to the Empire. As a result, they were considered missing. Suddenly, the girl turned to him and asked him if he could stay here. He wondered what she was talking about. The girl took his hand in hers and told him that here, in their lands, there are no more talented alchemists like him. Please, let him help them. In response, she will do everything possible to make him live here comfortably. The protagonist did not immediately find what to answer her. Then he said that he came here as a sign of friendship between their countries. He did not tell her that he was also preparing to escape from here. He was going to come up with an escape plan as soon as they arrived at the castle. But now there is no point in it, because no one limits his freedom here. In addition, Mabel is an elf who gave him the opportunity to be called an alchemist. Thanks to her, he finally understood what it is like when someone appreciates him. He did not want to betray her hopes for him. Therefore, the protagonist decisively added that while he was here, he would do everything possible for the good of this country. Mabel's eyes lit up with happiness at his words. She began to thank him enthusiastically. Then, having calmed down, the girls said that in about an hour they would arrive at the castle. Upon arrival, an audience with the demon lord awaited him. Please let him prepare for it. Thor thought about it. The demon lord is a powerful demon who rules these lands. In order to stay and live here, he must certainly gain his favor. Mabel and the centaurs were friendly with him when they first met. He was curious about what the demon lord was like, what he represented. Finally, they arrived at the castle. They were met by the subordinate lords, led by Chancellor Kelv, who led them to the master. One of the centaur guards informed the demon lord Ruki Evergard that their guest had arrived. The protagonist and the king's subordinates who accompanied him bowed politely before him. A very interesting-looking creature sat on the throne. He looked at the protagonist and introduced himself as Ruki, the demon lord. And he must be Thor Rigus of the Dolgaria Empire? The protagonist answered him with dignity that he was. Ruki said that he would ask him directly. What can he do? Since the Empire chose him, does that mean he has some knowledge or skills? The protagonist said that he knows a little alchemy. Before arriving here, the protagonist had been thinking all along that if he were treated as a guest and not as a hostage, then he should try to come to an understanding. And maybe then he could finally take up alchemy, if the demon lord liked it. Ruki chuckled at his answer and said that it was interesting. Chancellor Kelv told the king that it was a craft that was not available in his dominions. The Empire was a scary country, since they had so many alchemists that they decided to send one of them to another state. The protagonist mentally objected that it was not so. It was just that the Empire considered alchemists useless. Ruki told the protagonist that if that was the case, they would prepare a workplace for him, which he could use at his own discretion. Thor asked him again in surprise, did that mean he would allow him to work as an alchemist? Ruki replied that it was. He asked the guest if he had any wishes. The protagonist did not hesitate and said that it would be convenient if his room was located next to the workshop. Ruki told him that everything would be done. Anything else needed? Thor replied that his skill required some equipment. He still could not believe that someone accepted him so easily. The demon lord told him to make a list of the necessary things so that they could prepare everything for him. Rigus added that he would be able to use his alchemical skills to their full potential and create anything he considered necessary. If something interested them, they would buy it. If it turned out to be useful to the people, they would organize its mass production. Did he agree with this? The protagonist bowed his head to the king and said as he wished. But he had one question. Rigus told him to ask. Thor asked him why he was willing to go so far. He appreciates his kindness very much, but he is an outsider and one who came from the Empire. Why is he so kind to an outsider? No matter how much he thought, he could not understand the reason. The demon lord was silent for a while and then answered him to learn new things from people. Thor was surprised. To learn? Rigus continued. Demons were once defeated by people because they had extensive knowledge. On their side were heroes summoned from another world. Surely, he already knew this. Yes, the protagonist knew. It happened several hundred years ago during the era of wars between demons and humans. At that time, to confront demons, people summoned heroes from another world. Heroes had powerful skills and fought bravely for the good of humanity. They strove to be the strongest on the battlefield. For this, they willingly fought demons alone to increase their levels. As a result, their thirst for power was transmitted to the people of this world. The idea of strength is everything became the heroic legacy of their empire. In the final battle, the heroes defeated the demon lord. The demons were banished to the northern lands, and the world became what it is today. Having fulfilled their duty, the heroes returned to their home world. Nowadays, heroes are no longer summoned. However, their items and knowledge remain to this day. Thor asked the demon lord, but wasn't that 200 years ago? He answered him that it doesn't matter how many years have passed. The demons were defeated by humans. They must learn from this. That's why they want to learn new things from humans. The demons don't want to fight humans anymore, but they must continue to learn from them. They lost many soldiers in this war, and they cannot let their sacrifice go to waste. Thor was surprised to think that this really does sound like the demon lord's policy. Rigus added that this is why they invite envoys from the Empire, so that one day their country could proudly stand side by side with the Empire. That's why they needed the help of someone like him. MC couldn't believe it. The demon lord is the king of this country, and he recognized his skills as an alchemist. He was really excited. Here, he would be able to freely create and make whatever he wanted, and that meant he simply had to try it. So the protagonist politely answered the demon king that with the highest alchemy, he would create many amazing things for his people. First of all, he would like to demonstrate what his alchemy is capable of. Let the Lord accept this as a tribute to his hospitality. Rigus said that he accepted his answer. Kelv turned to his lord and noted that their guest must be tired after a long journey. The king told him that he was right, so the Lord told the protagonist that it was a long journey and he should rest well first. The protagonist bowed his head in agreement. With these words, the audience ended. A little later, Rigus called his subordinates. The commander of the Elven Magic Squad, the commander of the Lizard Assault Squad, and the commander of the Minotaurs with their squads appeared before him. The demon lord informed them that the reason he had gathered them all was none other than the arrival of a new guest named Thor. He hoped that they themselves understood this, but just in case, he would remind them that they were forbidden to harm the guest. All the subordinates reported to the king that they understood him. Rigus continued that they should not forget the pride of their people. Let them treat Thor with respect, and let them try to learn a lot from talking to him. The commander of the elves apologized to his lord for arousing his suspicions. They did not intend to harm the guest, but is there anything to learn from him? The lizard commander tried to stop his comrade from saying these words. But the elven commander continued, saying that he thought they should remind their guest of the demon lord's power. For starters, he should show him the army of the Ifrits to let him understand how terrible the demons can be. Rigus, thoughtfully, in a wheedling voice that did not bode well, said, "Show the guest how terrible the demons can be?" Yes, that certainly makes sense. Taking the opportunity to show him all the power of their army, that was an excellent suggestion. The elven commander, unsuspectingly, expressed his joy that his lord approved of his proposal. But he did not have time to finish, because the lord stood up from his throne and growled angrily, saying that he only heard in his words a disdainful attitude towards the empire. Perhaps they forgot that their country began to prosper only because their ancestors were afraid of humans. The elven commander stuttered in fear, and from the lord's reaction, Rigus continued to complain that they were so many more. Plus, the humans wielded weapons that were far superior to theirs in strength. Let them take a close look at the current empire. This country continues to expand its borders and build up its military power to this day. So why, knowing all this, does the commander tell him that they have nothing to learn from the empire? The elven commander tried to make amends. He fell to the floor in a deep bow and noted that he was very sorry for his stupid words. The demon lord was literally raging. Thor, their guest, he was an alchemist who decided to work for the good of their country. He allowed them and Kelv to evaluate his products and distribute them for the use of the people. Thanks to this, they will be able to learn more about the culture of the empire. All the subordinates, trembling with fear, fell on their faces before their master. Kelv, noting this, turned to the Lord and expressed his hope that his order had reached the ears of everyone present. However, Thor is from the empire. Still, they should remain vigilant. Ruki, who had calmed down, remarked that it should be as he said. The Lord turned to Mabel and ordered her to look after the protagonist and support him. The girl bowed to the Lord and told him that she would fulfill his order with pleasure. Kelv asked her if the protagonist had fixed her pendant. The girl answered that it was so. Ruki wondered if her pendant was made of magic silver. Wasn't it? Mabel also confirmed that he was absolutely right. The Lord remarked in surprise. So Thor had fixed it without having the required materials with him? Kelv remarked that this could be determined with an assessment. He placed the pendant in his hands and used the skill appraisal. What he saw confused him. He asked the girl if this pendant had belonged to her mother, wasn't it? Mabel said in bewilderment that it was so. It has been passed down in her family for many generations. But, during this time, it had already completely lost its power, because the stone in it had been broken long ago. Kelv, having listened to her attentively, answered her that the protagonist had restored it too. All those present stared at the Chancellor in amazement. Kelv proclaimed that Thor Rigus had repaired the pendant with the water spirit stone. Not a single craftsman from the land of the demon lord could do this. Mabel said in bewilderment that she could not believe it. The Chancellor summarized that this was the truth. And from this, two conclusions could be drawn. The first is that there are alchemists who are able to repair a magic item in the blink of an eye. Second is that there are many alchemists of this level in the Empire, since they are ready to send one to another country. Ruki said that this was obvious. Would the Empire throw away valuable personnel? Kelv continued. Besides, perhaps the Empire wanted to show them its power in this way. After all, if they have many alchemists like Thor, then their resistance to the Empire is pointless. The commanders looked at the Chancellor in amazement. He said, "Or is it possible that the Empire is stupid enough to not appreciate his abilities?" Ruki objected to him. "Let him not talk nonsense. It is impossible that the Empire does not know anything about his abilities. Do not underestimate people." Kelv, with a guilty look, agreed with the master and apologized to him for his assumptions. He noted that they would be vigilant as before. Demon Lord said that he relied on him and let him prepare a suitable room for their guest, as well as a workshop. At this time, Mabel came to the protagonist. On the way to him, she was worried that she was quite late. He must be very nervous in a new place. Having come to him, the girl apologized for making him wait. She offered to show him where his room was. The protagonist, looking at the contents of the room where he was waiting, picked up a vase and thanked her for her concern. The girl asked him if there was anything that interested him. Thor answered that he was interested in absolutely everything here. He began to point at various things. He was interested in what materials these things were made of. Who made them? Mabel smiled. It seemed that she had worried in vain. She told him that they would have as much time as they needed to discuss this. But first, she had to show him where his room would be. At that moment, two lizards appeared in front of them. They informed them that, by order of the Demon King, they would accompany them. Mabel was very surprised by this. Although these creatures did not have weapons with them, they could easily defeat Thor with their claws. Even if they were afraid of Thor, they should not act so obviously. Their guest would hardly like it either. At that moment, the protagonist approached them and thanked them. He expressed hope that they would become friends. The girl thought skeptically about this, or not. The main character turned to her. He said in bewilderment that he still did not know so much. She asked him if something had happened. MC confessed to her that he was meeting lizards for the first time, so he was a little surprised. Mabel, in turn, was surprised that she was meeting a person for the first time who called these creatures correctly. Usually people say much worse about them, two-legged lizards or nasty reptiles. The girl answered him that there was something to be surprised about. Lizards are very strong and they also have powerful protection. It is not surprising that they look unusual for a person. Thor said that he did not mean that. He just thought that it was probably hard for them to change clothes because the fabric clings to their scales. Mabel was surprised. What was he saying? The protagonist continued, saying that it was his duty as an alchemist to develop clothes for them that would be comfortable for them to use. Both the lizards and the girl listened to his speech in amazement. She asked him if he even thought about such things. The protagonist answered that he did. He really wanted to know more about how representatives of different races lived. Mabel listened to him in surprise. He noted that in the lands of their ruler, there were a variety of inhabitants, from demons to demi-humans. And for sure, all of them had their own problems that they faced every day. By solving their problems, he would be able to gain a variety of experience and hone his skills. And one day, he would definitely create something that could change this world for the better. He was grateful to the Demon King for allowing him to work here. He would like to thank him properly for this. Mabel realized with surprise that Thor was telling the truth. This becomes clear just by looking at his shining eyes. Races and countries do not matter to him. He really loves alchemy and is seriously going to help others. He is truly an amazing person. She said out loud that she approved of his desire, and she would help him in any way she could. The protagonist answered her that it was mutual. They would definitely become friends. Mabel could not believe it. Was it possible that she would help a person who could change the course of history? The girl had a dream. In it, her relatives accused her of being an elf if she could not use magic, all because she had human blood. Can she even be called an elf? The fact that she did not have the elementary is disgusting. She is a disgrace to their family. She is useless. Let her get out of here. Mabel jumped up on the bed and screamed to be left alone. Opening her eyes, she realized that it was just a dream. Those memories again. Will she ever be able to overcome this? The girl touched her feet and noticed that they were, as usual, like ice floes. If only her sensitivity to cold would disappear along with her childhood trauma. She looked at her warm socks. Although the girl was embarrassed to wear them in front of the protagonist, he couldn't see her now, so she happily pulled the socks on her icy feet. Meanwhile, the protagonist was surprised by the contents of the warehouse. He exclaimed with admiration that this was simply unbelievable. This was the warehouse of the Demon Lord's castle. The entire floor here was littered with countless interesting things. Before he could get closer to the scabbard to take a closer look at it, his eye immediately caught on the dented armored shield. The protagonist was overcome with real euphoria. He exclaimed that the Demon Lord's castle was the best. There was a whole gallery of treasures here. The king of these lands did not give him this room out of the kindness of his heart. He expects that he will be able to create something useful here. If he fails to live up to expectations, he could be returned to the Empire. To prevent this from happening, he wanted to create something that would please the Demon Lord and be useful to the people. The protagonist began to rack his brains. What could he make? Maybe something for the house? He couldn't wait to try. There were all kinds of things here. Many of them would be useful as materials. A book caught his eye. It was a product catalog. He had never seen such symbols. Most likely, no one could understand the content, so it was simply left here. He leafed through it and noted that both the letters and the pictures were done very finely. No technology in this world could do this. Most likely, this book is from another world, left by the heroes. One picture caught his attention. It depicted a woman sitting on a chair, with her feet in some kind of interesting vessel design. The protagonist cursed. He didn't think that there was such a thing in the castle. A book is useless if you don't understand what's written in it. He noticed the cover and thought, what is this, a product catalog? Is this the title of the book? Did he read it? The protagonist was stunned, wondering if this was because of the appraisal skill. This skill is able to read the properties of objects. Perhaps that's why he can read what's written here. Leafing through it, he realized that with the help of this catalog, you can buy unique goods, and they were delivered all over Japan. This must be the name of one of the countries where the heroes lived. He noted out loud that this thing definitely belonged to the world of heroes. The protagonist continued leafing through it and came across health devices. These seemed to be the restorative items from the hero world. They could relieve eye fatigue, eliminate shoulder pain, or improve sleep. The protagonist was surprised. Did the heroes really use this? He began to read about these items more carefully. Vision improving glasses in just 2 minutes a day improved vision by 20 times. The rapid recovery oxygen capsule in just 2 hours restored as in 10 hours of sleep. He thought no wonder the heroes were the strongest if they used this. He wondered if he could create something like this. The protagonist had just summoned the highest alchemy when at that moment Mabel came to him, bringing him something on a tray. He flinched at her appearance. The girl apologized for scaring him. She tried to say that she brought him tea, but he did not react. He was very focused. She asked him if he found something interesting. The protagonist showed her his find and said that it was a book from another world. He turned to Mabel. Could she read it? The girl looked closely at what was inside this thing, but regretfully noted that she did not understand what was written there. MC was not surprised. He thought that she would not be able to read. Mabel added that sometimes such things end up here. The Demon Lord said to bring here any things that might be useful someday. The girl muttered irritably that this was the logic of someone who did not need to clean up. She told him that they should not talk about it. How would he feel about having a cup of tea? The protagonist thanked her for her concern. He would definitely not refuse tea. At that moment, he noticed warm socks on her and was very surprised by this. The girl asked him, did he notice her socks? He wondered why. She explained to him that she was very sensitive to the cold. The doctor said that it was because of problems with her internal magical flow. Thor thought in amazement, magical flow? He had never heard of such a thing. Mabel continued, despite the fact that elves are very good at magic, because the flow of magical power in her body is disrupted, she cannot use spells. Most likely it has to do with her grandmother. They say that she was a human. That is why the elves once threw her out. Luckily, she turned out to be good at housekeeping and cooking, which is why the demon lord took her in. The protagonist, almost crying, noted that she had such a hard time. Mabel stopped short, became embarrassed, and then asked him for forgiveness for blurting out too much. She assured him that she was fine now. Now she no longer cares about such things as the inability to use magic. Besides, now she is very glad that her grandmother was a human. Thor asked her in surprise, was that really why she came to meet him? Mabel smiled at him and replied that it was. She would really like to know what people are like. Therefore, she is glad that the first person she met was him. She is happy. After all, her grandmother belonged to such a wonderful race. The protagonist thanked her for the praise. She laughed shyly in response to his words. MC thought that, after all, the lands of the demon lord are amazing. It turns out that they had previously accepted people from other countries just as easily. And Mabel even got a job in the castle, being their descendant. Suddenly, an idea dawned on him. He turned to the girl, he asked her if she did not mind, would she help him with an experiment? He showed her 2 old shields, and said that in the book he found there was a restorative device for people with poor blood circulation. It is made in the form of a small, semi-closed container in which 2 feet are placed, and on the front part, there seem to be glowing symbols. The name of this device is a foot bath. The protagonist read her what was written below in the description of this device and its principle of operation. It said that vibration and a strong stream of water will warm the user's feet. He will get rid of cold feet and improve blood circulation throughout the body. In addition, the user will be able to improve the flow of energy through stimulation of acupuncture points. But there are contraindications. From the very first use, the user will feel the result, get rid of cold feet, and live a healthy life. The protagonist noted that this was expected from a book from the world of heroes. It sounded convincing. So, he will need magic stones of fire and wind. As materials, he will take old shields from this warehouse. Fire shield absorbs enemy attacks, after which it releases a pillar of flame. It is impossible to use it because its internal magic mechanism is completely out of order. Wind shield reflects enemy arrows with a powerful stream of air. It is also impossible to use. Its internal magic mechanism is also completely out of order. Will he be able to take out the magic stones from these shields if he softens the shields with a skill? The protagonist called upon the highest alchemy and activated it. The armored shields, like plasticine, easily crumpled in his hands. He easily obtained the stones he needed. He was going to make the base of the shield into the base of the bathtub. At that moment, Mabel called him and told him that she had found a beautiful cup. Seeing the crumpled shield in his hands, she exclaimed in surprise, "What is this?" "This is the shield that was here. What happened to it?" The protagonist showed her what was left of the shield and explained to her that this was the result of using his alchemy. He took her cup and thanked her. The girl touched the former shield and noted that it was very soft. MC took it and said that now, using this material, he would recreate an item from another world. He activated the highest alchemy again, and the restorative item from the world of heroes, the foot bath, its creation. Based on the image that appeared, he began to prepare the materials. The protagonist imagined how the magic stones poured their power and dissolved in water. He understood that he would not be able to create an item exactly like the one in the world of heroes. The description was too short. However, using magical power and stones, he would create an item with similar properties. He visualized a powerful stream of water that would warm his feet and improve blood circulation. He also imagined stimulating acupuncture points to improve the flow of energy and heal the body. The wind stone would create a stream. The fire stone would heat the water. At that moment, the system notified him that the image was confirmed. Creation was possible. The item was successfully created. A bath appeared before his eyes, like from a book. Not like it was drawn, but very similar. The protagonist exclaimed that he did it. He created this item so he could see all its characteristics. He decided to see what he got. The system gave information that this item is a foot bath. Creation attributes are fire, water, wind. Rarity is 2 stars out of 3. The fire stone heats the water. The wind stone creates streams of water and bubbles. Magic stones need to be replaced regularly. They were consumables. They need to be replaced once a year. The item must be washed with fresh water. Do not use detergents. The damage resistance of this product is 3 stars out of 3. It cannot be destroyed without the use of a magical weapon. The service life of the product is 25 years. Thor turned to Mabel in surprise. He told her that this item will help get rid of sensitivity to cold. It's called a foot bath. The girl asked him in amazement, "What? He has already made it?" He told her that it is so. Everything is already ready. She spoke in bewilderment. Not even 10 minutes had passed since she came here. Are all the alchemists in the Empire so amazing? The protagonist hesitated with an answer. He could not tell her that he was a hindrance to the Rigus family, so he never had the chance to visit an alchemy workshop. The protagonist answered her that he did not know any alchemists, so he did not know this, and his father always told him not to be arrogant. There are any number of people with the same skill as him, that's what he said. The protagonist added that, most likely, many can do this. Mabel exclaimed in bewilderment. Many? She can't believe it. There are many alchemists in the Empire who have the same abilities as him? Thor noted that there is nothing surprising in this. He just copied an item from the world of heroes. Mabel did not calm down. In such a short time he created an item from the world of heroes? He smiled at her, handed the girl the tub, and told her that it was for her. The girl thought she was crazy. An object from the world of heroes for her? Thor said that he would teach her how to use this device. Would she show him where the bathhouse was? The stunned girl answered that she would show him everything. Arriving at the bathhouse, the protagonist showed her the leg structure and said that he would explain to her how it worked. At that moment, Kelv remarked that he would be happy to watch, too. Let him please demonstrate the operation of this device. The protagonist was surprised. Why was the Chancellor here too? Kelv told him that he wanted to see the work of the object he had created. Thor didn't see a problem with that. Anyway, this device was created for use in demon territory. An observer wouldn't bother them. He began to explain step by step what needed to be done, accompanying his words with actions. The protagonist explained that first, you need to fill the tank with water. Then you need to wait a while for the water to absorb the energy of the firestone. When steam appears, everything is ready. He turned to the girl and asked her to lower her feet into the bath. Mabel readily took off her socks, sat down on the bench, and lowered her feet into the container. She immediately noted that it was very warm. The protagonist told her that there was a magical windstone on the front of the body. Let her activate it. This is necessary to turn on the vibration mechanism. Mabel pressed the stone and suddenly shuddered in surprise. She noticed that the flow of water affected her sensitive spots, as if sparks were running all over her body. The girl was covered in sweat. Kelv, worried, asked the protagonist if this was normal. The protagonist explained to him that this was the result of the stone's work. Mabel said in a relaxed voice that it was a very amazing feeling. She was very pleased. Warmth was spreading throughout her body. After a while, the girl said that she could not do it anymore. She was like in heaven. The protagonist understood what was going on. Big changes were happening in her body now, like a hot spring in the bitter cold, like a spring in the middle of the desert. As it was said in the book, the footbath drove away the cold. Kelv, watching her with concern, asked her in bewilderment, was she okay? Mabel answered him in a relaxed voice that she was fine. She felt like magic was moving inside her body. The Chancellor was surprised. Magic. He turned to Thor and noted, so what kind of healing item from the world of heroes did he make? The protagonist answered him that it was true. What was wrong? Kelv said that he also had some knowledge about heroes. According to his information, there were no records of heroes using any magical healing items. Most likely, this name was hidden by ordinary items for relieving fatigue. But why then did it have such an effect on Mabel? The protagonist answered him that there was nothing to be done about it. After all, it was an item from the world of heroes. The Chancellor was perplexed. Nothing to be done? Please let him think again. Thor objected to him. Heroes had powerful skills in magic, right? He doubted that in the world where such people came from, these were simple items for relieving fatigue. Kelv doubted. Did he think so? The protagonist noted that he was sure of it, although in fact, he also doubted it a little. The Chancellor fell to his knees and said that all this did not fit in his head. No healer in their lands could cure the girl of this affliction. And he did it in the blink of an eye with this healing item. Thor could understand the Chancellor's surprise. After all, they had all just seen with their own eyes the result of the work of an item from the world of heroes. How advanced was the technology in their world? He was still very far from it. Finally, the girl said that it was time to turn off this invention. It was too pleasant, she could not stand it anymore. Kelv asked her how she felt. She said that everything was fine. Her body seemed to have become lighter. She seemed to feel the magic circulating in her. The protagonist suggested that she try to use the spell. Maybe she would succeed at least a little. The girl was not sure that she would really be able to use magic. Ever since then, she had always given up without even trying. But now, she felt the strength in herself. Why not really try? Mabel concentrated under the attentive gaze of the protagonist and cast a spell in the name of darkness and wind. Then she activated the coal-black wind. A powerful black wave rose, from which even Kelv covered himself with his hands. It seemed that this wave would sweep away everything in its path. Both the Chancellor and the protagonist were amazed at what they saw. Mabel herself, not believing her eyes, said, "Did she just use magic?" The protagonist muttered in surprise, "Is she okay?" The girl noticed that everyone told her that she was no good, since she could not use magic. As if waking up, she rushed to the protagonist, hugged him, and thanked him with all her heart. Mabel admitted to him, in fact, she was always worried that she could not use magic. In her home village, everyone said what kind of elf was she, since she could not use it? But now, she can be really useful. she will be able to help everyone with her magic. She looked at the protagonist with a grateful look and noted that he was her benefactor. Kelv asked her if she had by any chance strangled the protagonist with her embrace. Mabel, realizing that she was still hugging Thor, let go of him and sheepishly asked him for forgiveness. Protagonist, having caught his breath, said that nothing terrible had happened. He thanked her. The girl was surprised. What was he thanking her for? He told her not to take it to heart. The protagonist asked her if not only her magical circulation, but also her susceptibility to cold had been cured. She noted that this was true. Her feet were now warm. She was not cold at all. It was simply amazing. Thor thought with satisfaction that he had not expected anything else from the world of heroes. And yet, how happy he was to create objects that could please others. He turned to her and said that she could have this bath for herself. Kelv objected that it was impossible. This item would be under His Highness's control. The protagonist was surprised. Why? After all, he made it to help Mabel heal her legs. The Chancellor noted that it was true, but if she needed this device, she could use it at any time. However, they could not leave an item unattended that could activate the magical power inside the body of whoever used it. If it fell into the wrong hands, it could upset the balance of power in the lands of the Demon Lord. Thor realized that there was nothing he could do about it. He would have to agree with it. If he started an argument with the Chancellor, Mabel could get into trouble. Therefore, giving Kelv the bathtub, the protagonist said that he understood everything. Kelv, taking the bathtub, noted that they would name a decent price for this invention. The Chancellor asked the protagonist if he would be okay with paying in gold coins. This is the currency used in the lands of demons. The protagonist stared at him in surprise. What did he say? The Chancellor in turn was surprised by his reaction. Thor asked him again, payment? Why? He simply created what he wanted. They were going to pay for it? Kelv, surprised by his reaction, asked him in surprise, is everything okay? MC cleared his throat and answered with embarrassment that he was fine. He thought, although in the Empire he received payment when he used his skills, it was mere peanuts. In addition, he could not choose how to use the skill. For the most part, he simply performed maintenance on the items that were brought to him for work. But here, everything was different. He could create things of his choice and receive not only gratitude, but also a reward for it. So he turned to the Chancellor with a request that they pay him with magic stones. Kelv said in confusion, magic stones? He hoped that the protagonist knew that, depending on how they were used, magic stones could also become dangerous weapons. Thor told him that in that case he would make a request, and they would give him only the stones that would be needed to create the items. If necessary, he would make a plan for using the magic stones. Kelv was surprised. A plan? The protagonist explained to him that he would create items for use in the demon territory. In exchange, the Demon Lord would supply him with consumables. How did he like that idea? The Chancellor thought for a moment, and then asked the MC in bewilderment if he didn't mind that his inventions would not be used by people. Thor noted in amazement. Should he be against it? No matter how amazing the item was, it would be meaningless if no one used it. He wanted everyone to be able to use his items. He would like to hear a variety of opinions about them, eliminate all the shortcomings, and thus bring his inventions to perfection. And then, one day, he would be able to surpass the technology of the hero world. Mabel looked at him with admiration. Kelv, after a short pause, said that he would talk to the Lord. When he told the king about the protagonist's proposal and what he had created, Ruki couldn't believe it. The magic item made by the Thor skill cured Mabel's illness? The Chancellor confirmed that it was so. He had seen it with his own eyes. The Demon Lord was perplexed. He still couldn't believe it. Doctors from all over the demon lands tried to cure her, while this alchemist did it in less than a day. Kelv guessed that the reason was that Thor used 2 types of magic in his device. Ruki said foot bath. If he understood correctly, the fire stone is used for heating, and the wind stone creates a flow and bubbles in the water. The Chancellor confirmed that this was the case. In other words, these 2 elements are mixed in water. The Lord doubted. Nonsense. How is this possible? Kelv told him that he had no other guesses. In addition, Mabel's predominant element is water. There is every reason to believe that it is easier for her to absorb magical power through water. Thus, the heat created by the fire element was able to spread through the wind element throughout the body, thereby curing the susceptibility to cold, along with improving the circulation of the magical flow. Ruki was surprised. He thought everything through to the smallest detail. Yes, a frightening young man. Kelv said he dared to believe that he could be among the top 5 alchemists in the world. The Lord asked him, on the other hand, he simply copied an item from the world of heroes, right? The Chancellor confirmed that this was so. However, in the legends about heroes, there is no mention of items that can heal serious illnesses or strengthen the body. Basically, it says that heroes used restoration magic and strengthening magic for these purposes. And even more so, there is not a single mention of an item that can perfectly establish the circulation of magic, which, at the same time, looks like an ordinary container with hot water and bubbles. What kind of alchemist is this? He makes him completely doubt his knowledge of history. The Lord said in response that he also does not understand much. It is better for them to leave this topic and let him give the bath to Mabel. Kelv was surprised. Was he sure of his decision? Ruki told him that he valued her as a subordinate. Therefore, he saw no reason to do otherwise. The Chancellor noted that the girl had become quite close to the protagonist. It was not at all typical for her to open her heart to someone else. The Lord was surprised. What was he saying? Kelv explained to him that due to the inability to use magic, she was expelled from her native elven settlement. And even after arriving at the castle, she was reluctant to get close to anyone. However, Thor was clearly an exception. In this regard, he had a proposal. Why not let Mabel marry the protagonist if she so wishes? In this case, the protagonist would have a good reason to stay in their lands. The Lord was angry at his words. He exclaimed that this would not happen. He has known her since childhood. She's his dear subordinate. Even though they now live in the so-called world with people, demons will never bend to them. Kelv went cold with horror. He tried to calm his master. But the Lord was furious. No, his patience snapped. He was going to personally evaluate what the alchemist Thor is. Meanwhile, in the mansion of Duke Barca, Rigus told his subordinate during a meal that they finally got rid of this parasite Thor. Even breathing became easier. The butler, pouring wine into his master's glass, answered him that he was absolutely right. He thought that by this time, the demons had already managed to tear him to pieces. The Duke laughed and noted that this was a suitable end for such scum. At that moment, a knight came to them and told the butler that the royal court had requested the magic sword that they had left for repairs. The butler was surprised. What? Did they accept such an order? The knight was puzzled. Had he forgotten? They were tasked with restoring a magical sword from the time of heroes so that Her Highness the Princess could use it. The butler remembered that he had left a repair request with the government service. He would check if the sword was ready. Sometime later, when he came to the workshop, he was indignant. They couldn't fix it. The manager began to justify himself to him that this was so. They sent it to the Alchemist Association, but they refused. The butler was indignant. The document said that the repair was 80% complete. The manager noted about this that, in fact, their employee was repairing the sword. The butler asked in amazement, what was he talking about? The master, covered in sweat, answered him, the fact is that their budget is cut every year. Therefore, as far as possible, they try to fulfill requests themselves. The butler softened and asked him to call that very employee. The manager said with a satisfied smile that he had been fired. The butler exploded again. What did he say? What kind of idiot let such an employee go? And after that, he calls himself the manager? The man stuttered again and began to justify himself to him. They did not want to fire him at all. The butler angrily told him to go to hell. Who is this man? The manager told him that his name was Thor Kanen. True, that was his mother's surname. Now, after returning to the Duke's house, he must have become Thor Rigus. He was a very valuable employee. One by one, he checked all the items that came to them, and with the help of alchemy, he repaired those that needed repair. The butler was indignant. Why did they not receive reports on this? The master reminded him that the Duke himself had asked for this. They were ordered to conceal the name and area of Thor Rigus' activities, so that rumors about him would not reach the nobility. Therefore, they could not keep reports on his work. The butler growled in frustration. The master added, if Thor had returned to the Duke's family, why didn't he ask him to fix the sword himself? The butler irritably shouted at him to shut his mouth. Let him not dare to tell the nobility what to do. This sword would be repaired in the best alchemy workshop. He could forget about its existence. And let him not dare to mention the name Thor Rigus anymore. He grabbed the sword and left the workshop. The next day, the butler came to another workshop. But he also became indignant at them. How could this be? They couldn't fix it. The master told him that he was very sorry, but it was not within their competence. The butler was beside himself with anger. He dared to laugh at him? This was the largest workshop in the empire. The master, after another inspection of the weapon, patiently explained to him that repairing a magic sword was a very difficult task. He pointed to the blade and asked the butler, did he see? There are cracks here, or rather there were. Now the cracks are closed, but the blade is still damaged. If it were an ordinary sword, they could ask the blacksmith to repair it. But this is a magic sword. When repairing, the elements of fire and earth must be added to the metal. Does he understand that? The butler nodded to him in agreement. The master continued, therefore to repair, the alchemy skill is required to bring the metal used in the work in line with the original. The butler did not understand since he knew this. Why did he not repair it? To which he received the answer that, in their empire, there were no alchemists of such a level. He was surprised. How so? The master said that they existed in the age of heroes. But over time, alchemists began to lose their status, and their number decreased, and their skill began to decline. In their youth, he and his comrades often talked about the fact that if they did not continue to develop their craft, then the techniques that were preserved would be lost to future generations. The master thought for a second, and then noticed but there was someone who practically fixed this sword. Why didn't he ask him to finish the repair? The butler was dumbfounded and silent. The master continued, examining the blade, that the work of the master who worked on this sword was beyond praise. There should have been a crack in the middle of the sword, but he didn't see any traces. The cracks were filled in so that it was indistinguishable from the main material. He began to beg the butler to introduce him to this man who did the repair. He would definitely like to learn from him. The stunned butler thought that he couldn't do this because he had disappeared in the lands of the demon lord. But the butler was indignant out loud. No way. He leaned towards the master and said threateningly that he should listen to him carefully. Let him just fix this sword. It's just a weapon. Let him just make it look like new. Did he understand? The master bowed his head before him and asked him if a complete repair was required. The butler answered that it was not required. He had understood everything correctly. The master objected. If unsuitable materials were used, the strength of the metal would decrease. The butler said that it did not matter for a sword that would only be used as a ceremonial one. Besides, he was going to refuse the duke's house. The master had no choice but to do as the butler asked him. He said that since the master insisted, he would accept the order. However, he would have to write in the application that he was making a request only for an adjustment to the appearance and not for a repair. The butler was surprised. Should he sign the request? The master answered that he had understood everything correctly. This was to relieve them of responsibility for the quality of the repair. The butler agreed to this and signed the necessary documents. Meanwhile, in the demon lord's castle, Mabel was trying to feed the protagonist with a spoon. He wondered what she was doing. The girl said that thanks to him, she could now use magic. And the pendant, too, was as good as new. She would like to thank him somehow. The protagonist, swallowing the contents of the spoon, asked her if she thought he could ask the Lord to allocate another room for him. Mabel, after thinking, answered him that it was possible, but it would take some time because there were no free rooms nearby. He sadly drawled that he understood. Most likely, the Lord thought that he would make this warehouse his workshop. But there are many valuable things here. In alchemy, it is often necessary to use fire and chemicals. Therefore, important books and materials from another world can be accidentally damaged. It would be better if he had a separate room for a workshop. He turned to Mabel and asked her to give him a tour of the castle tomorrow, and they would leave the topic of the room for now. The girl responded positively to his request. She added that she would spare no effort to fulfill any of his wishes. He was embarrassed and suggested that she do without it. Having collected all the dishes, she said that now she needed to clean up the place. After that, she would bring him tea. Humming, the girl left him. The protagonist thought about the workshop and began to look at the product catalog book. He thought that if only there were an item that could create a workshop anywhere. Oh, he wanted to look at this topic in the storage section. The protagonist remembered that the heroes had a skill that allowed them to store things in another dimension. What was it called? Storage box? Storage skill? Item box? You could put as many items as you wanted there and take them out at any time. In addition, you could sort the items in any convenient way. He sighed and lamented the lost technology of the era of heroes. If he could create a storage box like this, maybe they could even figure out how the hero skill worked. He should still try it. There was bound to be something like this in this book. As he flipped through the pages, he noticed that he seemed to have found what he needed. It was called a compact storage box. Its characteristics stated that it was compact on the outside, spacious on the inside. You could store anything. You could sort items in the blink of an eye and take them out just by thinking about it. This invention was called the White Rabbit Compact Storage Box. The protagonist was surprised. Wow, it really was it. The same capabilities as the heroes. The book also indicated its dimensions. The height was 2 meters, the width was 3 meters, and the depth was 4 meters. It was made of metal and had a large sliding door. He was intrigued. Was this just the outside? Turning the next page, he saw an explanation there. After reading it, the protagonist exclaimed that this was simply amazing. The storage room could support the weight of up to 1,000 rabbits. It was also spacious, like another dimension. This was unique technology. Thor was surprised. Another dimension? Does that mean another dimension exists? The heroes used a bag or sack, but to get items directly from another dimension, it was impossible for them. This storage room is a next-generation item. We were talking about horned rabbits, weren't we? They were the first ones the heroes tamed when they came to this world. The body length of these creatures was more than 1 meter. The protagonist was amazed that this was amazing. This item could support 1,000 horned rabbits. He might not be able to create something so powerful, but he would definitely try. He activated the highest alchemy and called for activation. The system told him that creating a compact storage room was possible. Not enough magical power. The earth and wind elements were enough. The dark element was not enough. Thor was upset. He lacked dark magical energy. But creation is possible. The amount of darkness he can use is still small. Because until recently he lived in an empire where there is practically no dark energy, and light prevails. This was a problem. MC thought out loud. Where could he find an owner of sufficient darkness power? He did not notice how the Lord himself came to him at that moment. At that moment, the system notified him that the absorption was complete. The creation of the item was possible. The protagonist was surprised. How is this possible? What happened? At that second, Ruki apologized to him for his visit. He asked him if he had disturbed the protagonist. He had something to talk to him. The protagonist knelt before him and greeted him. Ruki noted that there was no need to bow. He did not come on an official visit. Thor thought that he felt it during the audience. The demon lord always holds himself with dignity. Also, his mask and robe are magical items. The alchemist's instinct told him that these were very powerful artifacts. The lord said that, first of all, he wanted to express his gratitude to him for the fact that Mabel could now use her magic. He had known her since she was a little girl. She was very dear to him. He was grateful that he was able to relieve her of her worries. The protagonist answered him with embarrassment, saying that he was not worth the gratitude. She had always been there and helped him. Therefore, if he had managed to create something useful for her with the help of alchemy, he was already happy. Ruki noted that, after all, he was strange. Thor was surprised, wasn't he? The demon lord said that all the previous messengers were so scared that they couldn't even speak. In addition, they immediately ran back. However, he was completely calm. He was still wondering if he was up to something suspicious. The protagonist smiled and asked him, "So he noticed?" The lord flared up. Was he right? The protagonist turned to him and said that he was actually thinking of making it. With that, Thor showed him the book that talked about the storage room. He read him the part where it said that it sorted everything in the blink of an eye. A storage room that wouldn't break even under the weight of 1,000 rabbits. The protagonist asked Ruki if he could make it. He needed more space to work. The lord looked at him and said that he was really weird. Could he ask him something? MC readily replied that he could ask him anything. The demon lord noted that Thor said that he intended to create an item here that would surpass the technology of the hero world. Is that true? The protagonist answered that it was true. Ruki wondered if he was crazy. The heroes came from a world that was much more advanced than them. Thor countered that he was lucky for them. He had this book, a catalog of items from the hero world. There are many magical items shown here, including the foot bath he had created earlier. Ruki spoke in confusion. Is that so? The protagonist continued with fervor. He knew that the heroes were far superior to them in knowledge. But that is why he wanted to continue creating items of their world, and then perhaps they would be able to comprehend all their technology. He put on a determined look and noted that this would definitely happen. He would improve his alchemy skills, and then he would open his own workshop. He would hang a sign on it saying Alchemy Shop. He would collect all sorts of materials there to create amazing things. He would like the items he created to be widely used in the demon lands. Then he would be able to hear the opinions of users and improve alchemy even more. The overlord cut him off mid-sentence, addressing him by name. Thor cursed. It seems he forgot himself and said too much. As soon as he touched on the topic of alchemy, all his inhibitions disappeared. But, to his surprise, Ruki smiled and exclaimed that it was a great idea. He liked it. It was the first time he heard of an envoy from the Empire trying for the benefit of demons. He was a very interesting person. Therefore, he gave him his permission. The protagonist, not believing his ears, asked him if it was true. Ruki spoke. Otherwise, he would not be a demon lord. Looking at his zeal and passion for the cause, he could only accept his aspirations. The protagonist addressed him by name, with all his appearance letting him know how grateful he was to him. Ruki continued. He said that he wanted to make a compact pantry? Let him make it. He gives him his permission to do so. MC, smiling happily, asked him if he allowed him to use it too. The Lord answered him that he allowed him to do that too. The protagonist thanked him with all his heart. He added that he had prepared some materials here. Ruki asked him in amazement, was he going to make it right now? The protagonist noted in bewilderment. He himself had only just allowed it to be done? Ruki did not take back his words. Yes, he had allowed him, but he did not think that he was ready for it right now. Thor had prepared the materials for this item in advance. He had softened and crumpled several metal shields into lumps. The storage room will be made of metal. The catalog listed the dimensions as 2 meters high, 3 meters wide, and 4 meters deep. But he didn't need such a large storage room. The element of darkness required for creation had accumulated enough. It was time to start making it. Ruki called out to Mabel and asked if he was seriously going to create an item right now. She answered with a smile that that's just how he was. If he got fired up about something, there was no stopping him. It is impossible to understand what is in the alchemist's head. The girl said that Thor was the one who could understand them. Recently, when she showed him around the room, he said that he wanted to create clothes for lizards that wouldn't cling to their scales. Ruki was surprised and asked, "A human wants to make something for lizards?" Mabel explained that she thought he was able to see the essence of things, free from prejudice. He was thinking about the difficulties that the people of the demon lands faced, and that he could really be useful to them. She asked him to believe in him. At this time, MC thought that the size was too big. He would make all sides 1 meter 20 centimeters. He would make the body of the storage room from the iron ingots he had prepared. Inside, he would pour the element of darkness to create a storage space, and with the help of the element of wind, he would fill it with air. The materials were determined. It was time to begin creation. Texture, weight, color, smell, hardness. He needed to imagine all of this. The protagonist activated high alchemy and created a compact storage room. The item description said it had the attributes of earth, wind, and darkness. With the element of darkness, the item creates a subspace inside itself. With the element of wind, the subspace is filled with air. With the element of earth, the subspace is fixed and closed. Compact pantry creates a separate space for storing items. Food placed inside the subspace does not spoil. Items are sorted automatically. When the item is in demon territory, magic stones are not required to recharge. The element of darkness is absorbed automatically. Durability 5 cannot be destroyed by a low-level spell. No magic can affect the items inside. The item's service life is 100 years. MC thought that the creation was complete, but it clearly does not reach the item from the world of heroes. The pantry from the catalog is much larger and more spacious, has a keyhole and a drain for rainwater. He could not think the item through well enough. It really is still very far from their level. But mistakes are also important, because he wants to surpass the world of heroes. The protagonist turned to the others and noted that the creation was complete. Mabel admiringly said that he did a great job. Ruki was surprised and said that he couldn't believe it. He just went and created an item right there. But isn't there not enough space in this item to store materials? MC replied that everything was thought out. Had he ever heard of the item bag that the heroes used? He agreed and added that this item had an infinite volume. The protagonist said that this thing had a similar principle. However, this was the first time he created something like this, so it turned out a little worse than expected. Ruki was perplexed and asked if he was joking. Were alchemists who could create subspaces common in the Empire? The protagonist thought that he wasn't sure about that. Come to think of it, the Empire doesn't have much of the element of darkness, so maybe not. He couldn't have created this item either, using only his magic power. He said that they would leave the conversation about the Empire. First, could he check the item space? Ruki replied that he didn't mind. MC smiled and noted that in that case, they were leaving. Mabel smiled and approached him and said that they would be back soon. After some time, they entered the storage room. The protagonist was surprised to notice that it was so spacious. The girl asked in surprise, how could there be so much space inside such a small box? She started running and shouted that it was amazing. Let him look. Even if he ran, the edge was still not getting closer. There was nothing like that, even in the castle's treasury. The protagonist explained that it was all because it was a copy of an item from the hero world. Yes, their technology was truly amazing. Mabel called out to him and asked if he had decided to learn their technique in order to surpass them someday. MC smiled and replied that it was still a long way off. He thought that the storage box has unlimited capacity, but his compact storage has a capacity limit. In other words, the space is not unlimited. His technique is still far inferior to the hero world. The protagonist said that, after improving this technology, he might be able to create a bag or backpack with storage space later. And if he succeeds, would she do him a favor by testing this item in action? Mabel excitedly asked, is it really her? But she is only a servant. She cannot accept such a legendary item. MC noted that she always helps him. He values her very much, so he would like her to be the first to use his invention. The girl embarrassedly replied that he never ceases to amaze her. But she is incredibly happy about it. Suddenly, Ruki, being in the ordinary world, shouted, what's going on with them? Why aren't they answering him? Are they all right? The protagonist excitedly apologized and replied that they are all right. He remarked that he was glad that nothing happened to them. So could he also enter the storage room? The protagonist asked if he wanted to check the item's operation as well. Ruki agreed and added that, as the ruler, he wanted to make sure that the item was safe. MC agreed and added that in that case, he could go inside. After a while, the demon lord found himself inside, and was surprised to note that he did not think that it would be so spacious. He was truly amazed. The protagonist replied that his praise was an honor for him. He continued that it was quite bright here, and the area of this item was about the same as a sports ground in the demon lands. Suddenly, Ruki's mask flew off. A system window appeared, which said that a rare SS rank item had been discovered. Automatic saving is in progress. Item, Cape of Concealment, increases defense from all elements. Mask of Concealment, increases damage from all elements. MC was surprised to think that this was the Demon Lord's true form. All this time, there was a girl hiding under the mask? After all, he thought the whole time that the Lord was a man. Rukia screamed in fear. What do you mean? After some time, the protagonist justified himself. The girl answered discontentedly that she generally understood the situation, so he was forgiven. The The protagonist thought that the fact that her robe and mask were removed was his mistake. He completely forgot that this item automatically collects items. This storeroom automatically detects and collects rare items. That is why when the demon lord went inside, her mask and robe were automatically collected. After that, there was a big commotion. Rukia sat, covering her face with both hands, and Mabel ran around her in a panic. And he continued to apologize, simultaneously trying to explain what happened until they both calmed down. In the end, the demon lord generously forgave him. The maid knew about her true appearance. Also in the know were Kelv, Rukia's personal maids, and her family. But if only someone had hinted to him that the king was a girl, no one else knew the truth. Rukia asked with displeasure, did he think that a demon lord could rule a country with such an appearance? So, on Kelv's advice, she took on a more befitting appearance, using magic items. Mabel excitedly called out to her and remarked that she was a worthy demon lord. As for her height, perhaps she would grow even more. Rukia replied that there was no need to console her. She wanted to hear the opinion of someone who came here from the outside. What did Thor think of the demon lord's true appearance? MC hesitated and replied that it was as if he was seeing a divine image. Seeing her majesty, the demon lord changed his mind about many things. He always thought that magic items were the most beautiful things, but he was wrong. And he realized it when he saw her true form. In front of the demon lord's natural beauty, the beauty of his creations compared to her, he felt ashamed that he couldn't approach that level with his skills. Rukia cried out in embarrassment that she didn't understand what he was talking about. The protagonist replied that he was just saying what he thought. The girl exclaimed that he was talking too much. She burst into tears and added that he spoke so highly of her. But how could he say that about a person who wears a mask and pretends to be someone he is not? The protagonist said that he was sorry. He hadn't told her much either. In fact, he was neither a guest nor an emissary of the Empire. The Empire sent him here as a hostage, and this was the condition for sparing his life. In his father's eyes, he was a disgrace and a nuisance to the entire duchy, so he told him to leave and die, not to tarnish the name of the family with his existence. In Bulgaria, the most important thing is strength. If he is not a fighter and does not have destructive magic, then he is useless. The art of alchemy is child's play for the Imperials and is not respected everywhere. It is treated in the exact opposite way. However, he considers himself lucky to have ended up in the domain of the demon lord. Here, he can finally work as an alchemist with his shoulders straight. He was able to know the joy of creating objects and can create what he likes. Mabel asked in surprise if the rumors about him being sent to the lands of the Mad King as a hostage and living tribute were true. MC answered with a smile that it was. She was very upset and remarked that she couldn't understand it. How could he have the courage to admit it? It would be better to make everyone think that he was an envoy from the Empire. He could use the Empire's name to dictate his terms here as an Imperial. The protagonist answered with a smile that it was nonsense. So can they keep it a secret? If it became known that he was a sacrifice sent to the lands of the demon lord, they would treat him differently here, right? Relations with the Empire might get worse, so it would be better if they kept it a secret. In exchange, he promised not to tell anyone about the demon lord's secret. He thought that they both understood. He would keep her secret, so let them keep his secret too. He thinks that under such equal conditions, they will be able to believe him. This girl is unsure of herself, so she hides her true nature behind a mask and robe. Just like how he was when he served in the Empire, he thought they were similar. Suddenly, Rukia laughed and shouted that he was stupid. He reveals his secret, reveals her secret, and demands mutual silence. What the hell is he doing? MC noticed that she likes to laugh, as he can see. The demon lord mockingly exclaimed that he is an idiot. It's bad that he found out her secret, but she is glad that she has dirt on him too. And since he himself suggested it, she has no choice but to believe him. The protagonist asked in surprise that she believes him. Rukia asked with a smile, shouldn't she? She believes him. He believed her. They exchanged secrets. If she was wrong about him, then she was not worthy of being a demon lord. The protagonist replied with a smile that he thought she was a wonderful ruler. The girl sheepishly stopped him and added that such a thing should not be said. After all, he was an honored guest from the Empire and her personal alchemist. She wanted everyone in the castle to make sure he was treated gently. That was all. Mabel put her hand on her heart and said that everything would be as she ordered. Rukia turned around and said that her and his identities were their secret. Only they should know about it. MC agreed and thought that in this compact storage room, they were able to reveal who they were to each other. It was like his personal refuge from the outside world and a great place to relax. Mabel happily asked why they didn't have a tea party here. Here they could talk about everything without fear of being overheard, right? If so, they could use this place in the future. Rukia agreed with a mischievous smile and added that it sounded fun. Doesn't he think so too? The protagonist said with a smile that he would remain silent as a fish and he wanted to repay her for her kindness. She exclaimed with displeasure. What was he talking about? She just wanted to have fun. Mabel agreed and said that she just wanted the two of them to relax here while drinking delicious tea. The protagonist replied that he understood them. They could use this place to have tea. The girls thanked him and they clasped their hands together. The MC thought with a smile that having tea here was all part of a story that had never been told before, but which had already begun to have a profound effect on the Demon Lord and was later called the greatest tea party in the Demon Lord's castle. Meanwhile, the Demon Lord summoned the Chancellor. When Kelv came to her, she apologized to him at such a late hour, but she had something urgent that she wanted to tell him. The Chancellor asked her if it was about Thor. Rukia told him that it was. She watched as he created a new item, although she knew little about it. Kelv was surprised. An item? Rukia told him to listen better. The Chancellor apologized to her for interrupting her. He added that it was not proper for a Demon Lord to express excitement over the slightest thing. So Thor had made another wonderful healing item, but who did he help this time? Rukia countered that it was not a healing item. Kelv guessed, then, a decoration for Mabel? The Lord noted that he had guessed wrong here too. She told him that the protagonist had created a space to store items. The Chancellor was amazed. He exclaimed, was she serious? The heroes use things like these to store items with a huge amount of space inside. And no longer holding back his emotions, the Chancellor screamed in surprise. So he could make the same thing? Rukia winced and asked him not to scream. Kelv exclaimed, but this was amazing. She noticed that he was getting more and more excited. The Chancellor did not hide his amazement. Before, only heroes had such things. Rukia asked him if he also knew about their storage bags. He explained to her that it was a skill that allowed you to store items in another space. This is also one of the reasons why heroes were so strong. They could take items out of small bags. The Chancellor remembered that this was a terrible threat to the demons of those years. They would see a person with a small bag and attack him as an easy target, and a moment later he would pull out a huge sword. Heroes only have one bag. Such a proverb can often be heard in the lands of the Lord of Demons. The Chancellor said that, originally, only the heroes of another world had this ability. Rukia told him that she knew it. And if every person had it back then, they would have already been destroyed. Clenching his hands into fists, Kelv noted, this storage box invented by the main character is very serious. They need to prevent Thor from monopolizing this item. Rukia began to calm him down. She told him that everything will be fine. He asked her in bewilderment, why was she so sure of this? The ruler said that he promised her to make another one for her and Mabel. The Chancellor's legs buckled in amazement. Not believing his ears, staggering, he asked again, Thor will make another storage box? The concept of rare things in the world will be violated. Rukia asked him to take it all calmly. He apologized to her. He was just completely confused by all this. Rukia noted that she should not have shocked him. The protagonist asked her to tell him something. Kelv asked her, should she tell him? She continued, he said that he wanted to be useful as the Demon Lord's personal alchemist. He promised to be on their side, so she wanted to try to create all the favorable conditions for him. The Chancellor asked her, did she really trust him that much? Rukia answered that it was true. Kelv admitted, in his opinion, he really deserved to be trusted. After all, he just gave them a foot bath. Rukia told him that it was true. This is who he is. He has no equal in this. She wanted the Chancellor to make sure that he had everything he needed and did not get into trouble. Kelv, kneeling before the Lord, assured her that everything would be like that. Noticing his worried expression, Rukia asked him, was there something bothering him? Kelv looked at her carefully and asked her a counter question. Did something else happen today? She was in an unusually good mood. Rukia replied that everything was fine. She and the protagonist had just had a pleasant conversation. He asked her, and that was all? The Demon Lord said that that was all. They talked and learned a lot about each other's positions, that's all. At this time, the protagonist and Mabel set up a table for tea. The girl giggled contentedly. He asked her what happened. She was thinking about what happened. It was so exciting. The reason for her mood became clear to him. He understood that she had been raised as a successor since childhood. The predecessor of the current Demon Lord was very strong and strict. He could fight a dozen opponents at once. That's why she wanted to be his equal. The protagonist noted that this was similar to his home. His father was forced to train him so that he would try to gain combat skills. He was ruthless. The protagonist sometimes felt like he could even kill him, so he left the Duke's house. He asked the girl if the Demon Lord was very strong. Mabel told him that it was. No human could defeat her in a magical duel. He wondered if there was a point in hiding her face then. The girl said that some people judge by appearance. Seeing a young girl, they would think the Demon Lord was weak. He noticed that there were indeed many such people. Mabel continued that there were also many strong comrades in the Demon Lord's castle. This was Mr. Raisenga, the Flame General. The Raisenga clan is known as a martial arts sect in the Demon Castle that feeds on the blood of the fire giant. He is just under 2 meters tall, has a muscular build, and his hair is red like flames. When he is angry, he emits fire. The main character would like to look at him, but he is afraid. He said, in ancient times, the Demon King entrusted the Flame Giant with the hair of the Flame Mountain. Was it during the war with the heroes? She answered him that the 7-day great battle had thundered. Reisenga is a descendant of a fire giant who protected the castle. That is why his strength is respected. The protagonist cautiously noted that it is better not to approach him. Mabel chuckled and answered him that times have changed. In fact, he is very kind, so everything will be fine. Suddenly she remembered that they were going to walk around the castle. Mabel asked him if they would do it tomorrow. Thor said that he liked the idea. He admitted to her that it was very good. Mabel was embarrassed and answered him that it was nonsense. Late evening came. The allies said goodbye near the protagonist's room. He thanked the girl for everything. The girl asked him to address her without any formalities. The protagonist objected. He was so obliged to her. She covered his mouth with her finger and noted that she did not need signs of respect. She is just a servant who's been assigned to take care of their guest. With his status, he is much more important than her, so she asks him to call her by her first name. The protagonist promised her this. She took his hand in hers, bowed to him, and asked him to stay here forever, because she wanted to stay with him forever. He exclaimed her name in surprise. What was she doing? Mabel, embarrassed, straightened up, wished him good night, and left. The protagonist was confused. What a day. He still could not come to his senses. MC thought, several days have passed since he came here, and everything was going well. He found a book from another world, made magic items. He is happy that he came to the land of the Demon Lord. Perhaps he can fulfill his wish and live a long life here. He did not plan to return to the Empire. He will make this place a real paradise for an alchemist, and will try his best for the sake of the Demon Lord and Mabel, and also for all who accepted him here. Meanwhile, while Thor was visiting the Demon King's territory, not everything was going smoothly in the Empire. In the Imperial Hall, the Blame clan was enjoying a party. There were a lot of nobles, both aristocrats and gentry. Everyone was having fun and making small talk. At that moment, the protagonist's father entered the hall with his confidant. Those present exclaimed with delight that Rigus was here too. They began to flatter him that he looked amazing. As expected of a noble of the first rank, one of the ladies coyly expressed her confidence that he was having a hard time now. The Duke looked at her in bewilderment. What was she talking about? Those present immediately picked up on her words, that the Duke was doing everything for the prosperity of their empire. They say that he gave his son as a prisoner to the domain of the Mad King. What devotion to the empire! One of the nobles exclaimed. That's what he said. The honor of their empire, such aristocrats as he. Everyone began to applaud the Duke in his brave, selfless act. Barca blossomed with pleasure. This praise was just right for the Duke. He turned to his attendant and remarked that it was not easy to be the center of attention, was it? Now that the shameful offspring was gone, the Duke's fame would grow. The man accompanying him wanted to tell him something about his son, since he had to talk only about fame. The Duke interrupted him and irritably told him not to dare mention him. He went to the lands of the Demon Lord, and died there, serving the Empire. That was it. Period. Barca muttered that he was only spoiling his mood and fun. Let him get him something to drink instead. The attendant readily left to carry out his order. At that moment, an admiring murmur of the guests swept through the hall. Her Highness Liana had arrived. The two young nobles looked at her with admiration. One of them told the other that her sky-blue eyes were simply beautiful. The other told him that they were. The princess was here, the bearer of the sacred sword of heroes, and a member of the dynasty's chamber. The man greeting the guests announced that Her Imperial Majesty Princess Liana, the third princess of the empire, had arrived. The ladies present enviously noted that she was not only strong, but also beautiful. The aristocrats agreed. The light magic that the princess possessed was so powerful that it was akin to the divine. Barca noticed. Yes, Her Majesty Liana. He approached her, greeted her, and said obsequiously that she was as beautiful as always. The princess measured him with an icy gaze and said that there were people here who did not deserve to be here. She ordered her guards to get rid of him. Barca was perplexed. What was going on? The princess's guards readily carried out her order, took the Duke by the arms, and began to lead him out of the hall. Barca exclaimed in bewilderment. How is this possible? Why were they doing this to him? The guards told him that he had to leave the hall. He irritably asked them why they were not listening to him. He was a duke. The guards politely asked him to turn in the direction they would show him. He began to break free from their hands, screaming for them to finally let him in. Having broken free, he ran up to the princess. Barca asked her why she was driving him away. Had he done something? Liana said in an icy tone that he had put her and her people at risk. And after that, he still dared to express indignation? Barca asked her in bewilderment. What risk had he put everyone at? She reminded him that she had instructed him to restore the magic sword. Did he remember? The Duke began to recall. It seemed that yes, he had received such a request. The princess continued. She was informed that the restoration was complete, and she received the magic sword. But when she used it, the sword could not withstand her magic, and its blade shattered into pieces. Barca exclaimed in amazement. How could this happen? Liana spoke. let him not even dare to talk to her. The magic burst out of the blade, and she almost lost her life. And she owes her salvation to her comrades, who covered her. The Duke listened to her with a stupid face. The princess noticed. She later learned that the magic sword shattered into pieces because during the repair, a piece of metal was simply inserted into the place of the chip. This part of the sword interrupted the flow of magic, and as a result, the blade did not withstand. Barca, with a stupid expression on his face, could not say anything to her in response. The princess asked him, does he still want to stay here? He knows very well how difficult it is to restore a magic item. Why didn't he just admit that he couldn't do it? Didn't he realize how dangerous a broken weapon is in battle for its owner? The Duke seemed to go limp from her accusations. What could he say to that? Absolutely nothing. He was morally crushed. Honor gained by deceiving people will never bring the glory it deserves. But he had to save his authority. The Duke was indignant. This couldn't be. Obviously, the restorer had done a bad job. He must have thought he could hide it. He was the one who should be punished. The princess angrily objected to him. She had checked it. The workshop responsible for the restoration had given her messenger these documents. She unrolled the scroll and quoted it. It was written there, since it was difficult to completely restore the magic sword, Duke Barca Rigus instructed the workshop to return it to its original appearance. The Duke took full responsibility. This document was certified by the ducal seal and the signature of the ducal chamberlain. Barca stared at the document in amazement. He wondered what this was. Everyone present was no less amazed. They could not believe it. The princess continued. The master in the workshop added that the magic sword was half repaired. Only a small defect remained, because of which, apparently, it split. She opened the case, took out the same sword from it. Its blade was in terrible condition. Liana said, "It is amazing, but the part of the sword that remained intact is the part that was half repaired. This is the only part that withstood her light magic. And only thanks to this, she still managed to successfully catch the Hexenbist." Barca answered her in a stuttering voice. He did not think that she planned to use it in battle. How so? Liana noticed that recently the magic of light had become so strong that after the ceremony, she had been tasked with defeating the enemy. Was she sure that the Duke's family had already been informed? The Duke shook his head in bewilderment. No, he did not understand what she was talking about. The princess, raising the broken piece of the sword, exclaimed that she owed her life to the one who had restored the surviving part of the sword so perfectly, and she would like to hire him. Would the Duke be so kind as to tell her his name and where she could find him? Barca began to dodge and wriggle. He told her that it seemed that one of the wandering masters had worked on the sword. He was not connected with him, and he did not know where he was now or how to find him. The princess asked him ironically, "Really?" In that case, she did not want to see him anymore. The Duke was immediately unceremoniously thrown out the door. The Duke, staring at the door, was perplexedly trying to understand how this could have happened. At that moment, his subordinate turned to him. Barca angrily shouted at him. What had he done? How dare he leave such clear evidence against him? Because of him, he had just been thrown into disgrace. The chamberlain, frozen with horror, began to justify himself, saying that he should forgive him, but there was no other way. Barca became even more angry. He began to shout at his subordinate to shut his mouth. He did not want to see him anymore. He was depriving him of his job. Now he's under arrest, and soon he would get rid of him altogether. The chamberlain seemed to be about to lose consciousness from horror and fear. Barca went to his carriage. The culprit wanted to follow him, but he was stopped. The Duke got into the carriage, told the coachman to start, and thought that his honor as a Duke had fallen. But there was a way to fix this. This way is a service. He would show that he was of great use to the Empire. He had a plan that would benefit the Empire. If they could use these stupid demons and subhumans wisely, he would be able to regain his glory. No, he would even be able to reach even greater heights than before. Meanwhile, in the lands of the Demon Lord, the protagonist asked Mabel to show him the castle. She winked at him playfully and said that he could count on her. The main character noticed that the girl had a new hairstyle. She seemed to like it. Walking around the castle, she explained to him where everything was located. His room was on the 3rd floor of the West Wing. The servants' quarters were on the 2nd floor, also in the West Wing. So if he needed anything, he should just call them. Then she led him to the kitchen, where they were happily greeted by the cooks and culinary staff. They were treated to a delicious drink. Coming out of the kitchen, Mabel introduced him to the main hall, which connects all parts of the castle. She warned him to keep up with her. There were several statues in the hall. Approaching one of them, the protagonist asked her in surprise whose statue it was. The girl answered him that it was a statue of the first king. He was surprised. The first king was a woman. The protagonist asked Mabel about the sword in the hands of the first king. The girl explained to him that the first demon king holds a sword made of a stone that fell from the sky. They say that she used it to fight heroes from another world. It is a very rare demon sword. The protagonist whispered to her, "Is this just a replica of the sword, right?" She noted in surprise. As she expected from him, he noticed it at first glance. The protagonist answered her. He knows this because he does not feel any magic from it. She thought, with his abilities in alchemy, this was expected. Mabel continued to tell him that this sword was broken in a battle with a brave warrior from another world, and she does not know where it is now. Thor noted that he is very sorry. The girl said that this is the treasure of the demon tribe. She would like to show it to him. The protagonist noted with anticipation that if this sword were in the castle, he would try to restore it. Mabel stopped in surprise. The protagonist was surprised by her reaction. Did he say something wrong? The girl noted that this was the sword of the first demon king, and it was not only about restoring it, but if he could do it, then it would be just a miracle. The protagonist reasonably said that they could do nothing if it was missing, right? Mabel was sure that it was somewhere in the outside world. The Lord would want to find it. The protagonist noted that this was understandable. He thought, he will look for it when he has the opportunity. Or, even better, he will forge a sword that will surpass the sword of the first demon lord. The protagonist did not notice how he began to reason out loud. He said that it would be possible to make a blade that can extend, or make it so that the magic of darkness can fly out of the sword. Mabel, who had been listening to him until that moment, asked him in amazement if he wanted to make a demon sword for their lord. Thor told her that he did. He thought that she would be pleased if she had her own demon sword. Mabel grabbed his hands and said with admiration that it was a great idea. If she could do something, he could come to her with confidence. She asked him to let her know if he was going to do it. At that moment, he noticed that the centaurs were smiling, looking at them, and whispering something to each other. One of them said that Mabel was always with Mr. Thor. The second, chuckling, noted that she was so happy. Mabel said that she would continue the tour for him. The protagonist readily responded to her offer. At that moment, someone behind them exclaimed, "Oh my God! Is this a guest from the Empire?" Turning around, the allies saw Rising. He noticed, looking at the protagonist, that he was a very weak-looking man. Thor, noticing the speaker's enormous height and red hair that fluttered like flames, could not believe his eyes. Was this the same Risenga? He said in amazement. The general of the tribe, Mr. Risenga? The giant grinned, so he knew his name? Indeed, he was the one he thought of. He was one of the generals of the Dark Lord. He came to see a guest from the Empire itself. Thor bowed politely and noted that it was a great honor for him. He told him his name and added that he was an alchemist from Bulgaria. He was looking forward to starting work with him. The general answered him that he was here more for his daughter. She would be very upset if she did not meet him. The protagonist thought in surprise, his daughter? He pulled out a girl from behind him, fully dressed in armor, and said, let him introduce his daughter, Agnes. The general's daughter said that she was very pleased to meet him. The general solemnly expressed his confidence that Thor was a worthy warrior of the Empire, even though he looked weak. He would be useful in battle, wouldn't he? Agnes tried to calm her father down. Mabel closed her eyes and somehow shrank. Thor told him that he was not suited for battle. Risenga noted in bewilderment. How could this be? If he were a warrior of the Empire, he would give him a chance to fight his daughter. But he was such a weakling. He was disappointed in him. Agnes irritably told her father that it was impolite of him. His daughter was seething with indignation. He took her by the helmet and told her to calm down. After all, there was fire in his veins. The general asked the protagonist who was truly strong in the Empire. He often visited the imperial capital. His territory was not far from the border, so he wanted to know the name so he could meet him. At that moment, Mabel called out to him and indignantly told him that Thor was their guest, and also he was an alchemist under the command of their lord. It was impolite to address him like that. Stop him sniffing around here for rumors about the Empire. Risenga slowed down because the protagonist was indeed their guest. He admired their king's desire to learn new things from people, but he believed that he should learn strength and combat power. After all, he and his daughter could only prove themselves in battle. Mabel reminded him that their lord wanted peace in the world. The general noted with a downcast voice that this was why he could not fight at full strength. He turned to the protagonist and asked him what he could do. How can he confront them in the lands of the Demon Lord if he does not know how to fight? The protagonist got a little angry. Mabel wanted to stop him. She was afraid of what could happen now, but Thor asked her to step back. He understood that the general was strong and he could kill him with one blow. He did not know what he would do to him if he did not answer him. They could try to reduce everything to a joke, or maybe make a sarcastic response, but he had already made his decision. When he left the Empire and swore an oath before the Demon Lord, he was sure that he would live his life with dignity. So the protagonist answered him that he was an alchemist, and he would be one until his last breath. With his skills, he could improve his daughter's armor. The general grinned, but what could he know about them? Thor turned to Agnes and asked her what she thought about adding the earth attribute. If the water attribute is too strong, it will evaporate violently and burst out as steam. If it is too weak, it can be defeated by fire and disappear. In contrast, the earth attributes are stone and iron, which are resistant to heat. In order to withstand the power of the Flame Titan, the armor requires an earth attribute to provide heat resistance, and a second earth attribute to provide durability. The general and Agnes were stunned as they listened to his speech. The protagonist noted that adding 2 earth attributes would make this armor a very rare item, right? He inspected Agnes's armor and noted that the current armor seemed to be weakened at the joints, as if it could not withstand the heat. His skills are finely honed. He can make a new enchantment with the exact balance of elements. Thor turned to the general and asked him what he thought. Raisenga growled at him to mind his own business with his alchemy. He would not allow some weakling to touch his daughter's armor. He turned to Agnes and told her that they were leaving. The girl was indignant. Her father could not speak to her like that. But the general silently left the hall. Agnes turned to the protagonist, bowed to him, and ran to catch up with her father. Everyone looked after them in bewilderment. One of the centaurs told the protagonist that he was surprised that the general had not made a single step in his direction. The second, laughing, noted that Raisenga had frozen in place. Mabel said in surprise that this was simply amazing. The general was one of the 5 strongest people in the castle, and Thor had so boldly, openly stood up to him, despite his pressure. The protagonist did not think that it was courage on his part. It was the work that had caught his attention. Mabel asked him, "The armor?" He noted that it was, and also he wanted the stern general to know his strength as a magician. That was all. Thor asked the girl if they could continue their tour. She readily responded to his offer. Thor thought that he was interested in learning more about the general and his daughter Agnes, but he did not think that this was what they should talk about here. He would ask Mabel when they finished the tour. Perhaps she could tell him more. He could never have imagined that he would infuriate General Rising. After a while, Mabel informed the protagonist that their tour of the Demon Lord's castle was over. They had done a great job. Thor told her that it had helped him a lot, and he thanked her. The girl smiled and noted that she was glad to help him. She asked him if she thought he would use the bathhouse often now. The protagonist answered that he did. He loved to relax in warm water, so he would definitely use it more than once. Mabel said that he could use the bathhouse without hindrance. However, he should be careful when there was a sign at the entrance that said, "Bathhouse occupied." The protagonist immediately went to the bathhouse. Approaching it, he noted that there was no sign above the entrance, which meant that the bathhouse was free. Entering inside, the protagonist noted that there was no one in the recreation area. Now he hoped he could wash himself in peace. Suddenly he saw things on the bench. Coming closer, he was surprised. Was it Agnes's armor? Touching it, he noticed that it was making a loud noise. Was it the steam hissing? Or maybe it was the process of heating the water by the salamanders, which he learned about during the excursion? Thor thought, if we talk about the salamanders, they are subordinate to the Ifrits. It is not surprising that Agnes looks in here. Since he will also be using the bath, he should at least say hello to her. Coming to the steam room, he saw that the door was slightly open, and Agnes's voice was coming from there. Looking in, the protagonist saw a girl playing with the salamanders. She laughed and told them not to be naughty. They are so naughty. She will play with them after they boil the water. Suddenly a large flame appeared. The girl screamed and picked up one of the salamanders. She apologized to her and noted that she had problems with control. Thor thought in surprise, is this Agnes? Until now, he had never seen her without armor. Her body was covered in flames, and besides, she was completely naked. That's how it was. There is no clothing that could withstand the descendant of an Ifrit and the flames of a salamander. When Agnes takes off her armor, she, of course, remains naked. He thought, before it's too late, he should leave. At that moment, one of the salamanders sensed him and went to the door. Agnes caught this movement, looked in that direction, and exclaimed in amazement, seeing the protagonist, "Is it him? What is he doing here?" The salamander released a column of flame at him. The protagonist was surprised. What was she doing? But he reacted instantly. He decided to activate the pocket super small pantry and collect all the raging flames in it. When he collected all the flames, he praised himself. It was a good thing he had thought to create one just in case. And although the pantry was small, its capabilities were no worse, and it was enough to absorb the flames. Agnes indignantly shouted at the salamander. What was she doing? Blowing flames at Her Majesty's guest. She said that she needed to call a doctor immediately. What would she tell her father? The protagonist answered her from behind the door that he was fine. She was surprised. What was that? Thor explained to her that he had something in stock for such cases. That's why he was safe and sound. Agnes exclaimed in amazement. Is that so? The protagonist noted, for starters, could they talk after she got dressed? The girl did not decline his offer. Having donned her armor, she said that this was their second meeting. The girl told him her name. Her name is Agnes Freyzad. The protagonist also introduced himself to her. He noticed that, regarding the recent incident, he asks her to forgive him. Thor fell to his knees and bowed to the girl. He said he heard that the salamanders are responsible for heating the baths. He became interested, so he looked in. He thought that she came to them. The protagonist saw her armor in the rest area, but he could not imagine that she had nothing under it. Let her generously forgive him. Agnes was embarrassed and told him that he should not apologize. It's just that few people come here at such a time, so she comes here sometimes to help these workers. It is not his fault. She just did not expect that anyone would come here. That's why she did not hang a sign that the bathhouse was occupied, and he had to see something so unpleasant. The protagonist was indignant. This is not true. Rather, she is so beautiful that he even stared, and he thought that if a portrait were painted of her, it would be a divinely attractive picture. He realized that his words could be understood in two ways, and he interrupted himself, asking the girl for forgiveness. Steam was coming out from under Agnes' armor. Thor began to worry. It seemed to him that she was now reliving what happened. Exchanging apologies is a dangerous thing. He needed to change the subject. He noted that those in whom the blood of the Ifrit flows are so cool. Agnes asked him in surprise. What did he say? The protagonist continued. Even such first-class armor cannot withstand her flames. Even if only at the joints, but they are starting to weaken. In his opinion, it is cool that she has such a powerful flame force. Agnes dejectedly admitted to him that she cannot control the flames. When she is nervous or excited, fire spreads from her body. That's why she practices flame control when she comes to help the salamanders. She's been friends with them since childhood, and she doesn't get nervous around them. Thor noted that she has a hard time. Agnes admitted that it was. That's why she doesn't like her mana very much. Before her fire mana awakened, she could wear clothes she liked. But now, whatever she puts on burns to ashes. Sometimes there's so much flame that she even burns those around her. Protagonist answered him that he understood everything. He'll think about how to solve her problem. Agnes was surprised. What did he say? Would he really do something with her fire mana? Thor noted that she understood everything correctly. He'll do his best. Agnes asked him, embarrassed, why was he trying so hard for her? The protagonist smiled and told her that it was because he was an alchemist hired by Her Majesty the Demon Lord. She asked him hopefully, would she be able to wear clothes again? The protagonist promised her that. Agnes was worried. But what would her father say to that? How would he take it? It was dangerous, so it was better for Thor to forget about it. MC said that the first time they met, the general asked him what he could do if he couldn't even fight. That meant he wanted him to explain what good he had done to the Demon Lord's domain, right? Therefore, he thought that solving her problem would be an action that would meet her father's requirements. Agnes thought about it. Maybe there was some truth in his words. Thor addressed her by name and asked her, would she trust him to solve her flame problem? The girl sobbed and told him that she wanted to wear clothes again. She wanted to make friends. Please, let him be so kind as to solve her problem. Thor was filled with enthusiasm. He exclaimed that he would start developing a magic item right now, and until it was ready, let her use this. The protagonist handed the girl the thing and explained to her that it was a mini version of the storage bag that the heroes used. When it was overflowing with flame, she could collect it in this box. He added that now he had to run. Now he had no time for washing. Agnes was embarrassed. What was he doing? What he was giving her was a very valuable thing. He smiled and noted that she should take it. He could create another one. It would be better for her to share her impressions of using this thing. She would need to mentally pronounce the word assembly while holding the box in her hand. He left her. Agnes, surprised by all this, thanked him for his concern. The protagonist came to the workshop. He thought that those with the blood of the Ifrit gradually mastered the control of flames as they got older. That is, there were those before Agnes who had encountered this problem. In general, it seemed that they completely mastered the flames by the age of 20. And for Agnes, this would be in about 5 years at best. For another 5 years, she would not be able to wear whatever she wanted and would be forced to befriend only salamanders. This should not be some temporary measure. A more radical solution was needed. He decided to look into the product catalog. This book is a treasure trove of items from the hero world. He would not be surprised if there was even an item that could quell the flames. At this point, Mabel distracted him. She asked him if he was looking for something. The protagonist did not expect to see her. She explained to him that his door was wide open. It seemed that he was in a hurry. The girl, looking at him carefully, asked him if something had happened. Thor answered her that he had just had the opportunity to communicate with Agnes. He was going to create an item that would hold back the flames for her. Mabel stretched out in surprise. So that's it? She asked him, for Agnes' sake, to make sure he did it. She, Mabel, was also asking him about it. Thor remembered her words about the general being kind and asked her if she was friends with Agnes. Mabel answered that she was. As he knows, she has served in this castle since childhood, so they often saw each other. Once upon a time, they played together. But one day, Agnes burned her hand very badly. There is a skilled healer in the castle and he cured her. She showed him her hand and noted that the healer completely removed even the trace of the burn. The protagonist asked her, so Agnes once burned her? The girl nodded in response and added that after that, they became distant. She became friends with Rukia. Mabel sympathetically said that since then Agnes began to avoid people and stopped showing herself. It seems that she is tormented by guilt and fear of hurting someone else. Thor was surprised. Is that how things are? He needs to start alchemy right now. He will create a magic item that can suppress Agnes's fire mana. Perhaps, if successful, Mabel and Agnes will be able to be friends like before. The protagonist flipped through the pages one by one until he came across the item he needed. He thought that he could use it. It was called a health pendant. This pendant helped improve the circulation of vital energy in the body and strengthened health. If the user has been feeling unwell lately, it means that it is due to an energy imbalance. In this case, the book recommended using this pendant. It was the choice of the greatest doctor of the 20th century. Mabel asked him what it was. The protagonist explained to her that it was a health-strengthening pendant, which incorporated the so-called feng shui. The girl repeated the word in confusion. Thor explained to Mabel that feng shui is a teaching based on the search for favorable flows of qi energy and their use for the benefit of man. Although the existence of qi has not been scientifically proven, it works. It seems that in the world of heroes, the general idea of mana is different from their idea. In their world, mana is divided into light, darkness, earth, water, and wind. And in the world of heroes, apparently mana is divided into 5 types: wood, fire, earth, metal, and water. Mabel was surprised, and indeed everything is completely different from theirs. Thor added that another difference is that in the world of heroes, mana attributes can be transformed into each other. Probably, this pendant moves 5 types of mana in a circle, due to which it tones the body and awakens its potential abilities. But unfortunately, the system of mana attribute transformation is written in this book only in general terms. Wood catches fire and feeds fire, and the ashes left after the fire become earth, which in the course of its transformation generates metal. Well, or something like that. Here is only general information, but this is expected. The magical community from another world cannot just openly post important data. He thought that even in the world of heroes, mana transformation is a secret technique. Besides, the lack of knowledge will not be a big problem for them. The explanation says that the pendant has an azure dragon, a red bird, a white tiger, a black turtle, and a unicorn in the center. Apparently, the pattern of divine animals engraved on the pendant makes the process of mana conversion enjoyable for the owner. Mabel, who had been listening attentively to him all this time, noted, as expected from an item from the world of heroes, even the little things are thought out. The protagonist agreed with her on this. He added that the book also says that thanks to this, the mana inside the body comes to balance, thereby strengthening the user's health. Probably, dormant abilities are also awakened, which can be a great success. Mabel thoughtfully said what an amazing item it was. Thor noted that she was right about that too. He thought that he would be able to contain Agnes's fire mana. His eyes lit up with anticipation. He would start creating it. MC activated the ultimate alchemy and called for the production of a relief item. He set the parameters that the pendant should be about the size of a palm. Since it would be on the skin, it should have a smooth chain so as not to damage the user's skin. And the most difficult part was to carve the figures of sacred beasts on it. They should be Seiryu, the azure dragon, Byakko, everything was clear here too. Tigers exist in their world too. Suzaku, the image of a scarlet bird, Genbu and Kirin, the black turtle and unicorn. They all need to be depicted exactly as they look in the book, and then it will work. The protagonist completed his understanding of the outside world. He then visualized smelting a health enhancement pendant using a piece of metal as the material, adding an internal mechanism for mana-type conversion. He was worried. Would he be able to do it? There would probably be no problem with the elements of fire, water, and earth. However, the elements of wood and metal made him worried. The protagonist sighed. And what is not in this world? The system informed him that he had mastered the control of the 5 elements. By acquiring knowledge of the mana of the other world, it was possible to manipulate the elements of earth, metal, and wood, in addition to fire and water. The system asked him whether to add these elements. The protagonist exclaimed, "Unbelievable. This is the ultimate skill of alchemy." It seems that ultimate alchemy can also work with the elements of wood, earth, and metal from the other world. Then he stopped thinking. He just needed to do it. Add the elements of wood, fire, earth, metal, and water to create a health-strengthening pendant. He concentrated and thought that the image of the item should be as accurate as possible. The protagonist asked Mabel to make sure that the sacred beasts on the pendant were exactly the same as in the book. The girl checked all the pictures and told him that everything was the same. She ran her eyes over the images again and confidently noted that the images were exactly the same as in the book. Thor thought that he had to ensure the precise conversion of mana. Then, it was time to implement the supreme alchemy. He called for the creation of a health improvement pendant. Then Agnes's overly strong fire mana would be replaced by other types of mana, and she would never have to cry again. Everything around lit up, and a pendant appeared before the eyes of the astonished allies. The system informed the protagonist that a pendant in the style of another world was created from the elements of wood, fire, earth, metal, and water. Its rarity was rated 6 stars out of 6. The pendant was created based on the concept of mana conversion from the world of heroes. The principle of operation was to divide mana into 5 elements and convert them into 5 types of mana. If fire mana has a strength of 100, it is converted into wood, fire, earth, metal, and water mana, each of which is equal to 20. All converted mana is used to improve and maintain the owner's health. Wood mana gives the user flexible life force, fire mana gives active energy, metal mana gave the user the power of durability, water mana gave the power of flexibility. The stronger the owner's mana, the more strengthening and healing effects he would receive. However, durability was unknown. When attacked, mana is converted or absorbed. The probability of destroying the item is unknown. The product's service life is over 100 years. Thor breathed a sigh of relief. He had succeeded. He hoped that this would help contain the fire mana. Mabel noted in surprise. The pendant depicted 5 divine beings. And if mana is concentrated on them, it will circulate in a circle, which contributes to the healing of the body, right? The protagonist answered her that this is exactly so. The girl continued, and if statues of these 5 deities were built and placed around the territory of the demon lord, would this be protection? MC, examining the created pendant, chuckled. The mana that circulates in this pendant makes people healthier. If this were applied to the entire kingdom, what might come of it? He suggested. Could he try? Mabel pointed out that it would require permission from Her Majesty and all her dignitaries. Thor thought that it all sounded complicated. But anyway, the pendant was created. Now he needed to test it, to make sure it was successfully converting mana. A pendant like this could be used by anyone. It could even be made a standard equipment item in the Demon Lord's lands. And most importantly, it could help Agnes. He was already looking forward to tomorrow. Agnes was wandering aimlessly around the castle. Her father came out to meet her. He exclaimed that he had been looking for her everywhere. Where had she been? The day after tomorrow, they were returning to their territory, and he told her to prepare. Had she done so? Agnes apologized to him and added that she had not been in the castle for a long time, so she was looking around. Reizanga told her that then, there was nothing to worry about. Agnes apologized to him for making him worry. The general objected to her. He did not blame her. Let her forgive him for all the troubles she had to go through. She could not control her flames, since the blood of their ancestors, the Ifrits, was very strong in her veins. It seemed to be one of their instincts, to express strong emotions with their fire, and controlling it was not something he could teach her. Agnes said sadly that she understood him. The general told her that his report to Her Majesty was ready. Now they would return to their territory and begin developing the mine. They had also received permission to conduct joint operations with the Empire, Agnes continued, because the territory they controlled was close to the border, and therefore, they should be on good terms with the Empire. The general noted that this was exactly the case. That was why he had come to look at the face of their guest from the Empire, who to his horror, turned out to be a sissy noble. Agnes reproachfully tried to stop her father. He continued, if she asked him, he himself would say that he had no fighting skills, did he not? He did not know how that nobleman turned out to be such a weakling. He had imagined an aristocrat from the Empire strong enough to compete with him. How pathetic. This was very disappointing. Agnes began to get irritated. She exclaimed, let him stop this. Thor is a good man. The general got furious. Did she talk to this man? The daughter answered him that it was true. She had met him. He was worried about the fact that she could not control her flames, and he gave her a valuable item. So, he should stop speaking badly about him. The general slowed down a little and said that he understood everything. They did not need anything from him. The girl turned to him and showed him the item that the protagonist had given her. The general remarked, so what? Even with such a thing, she could still only wear this armor. The girl wanted to add something else, but he interrupted her. She must understand that he, her father, thinks about her more than about anything else. Even this development of the mine is being carried out for her own good. Agnes said that she knows this. For this purpose, he exchanged letters with the border counts of the Empire. He did all this for her. The general said that she was right. It would be useful to her if the negotiations with the Empire were successful. They would need to destroy the magical beast lurking in the mine, and this is where she would come to the rescue. She would prove to everyone that her firepower could be useful. Agnes wanted to object to him, but he seemed not to hear her. He continued that her flames could easily defeat magical beasts, and this would amaze the people of the Empire. They would all say, here she is Agnes, the daughter of General Rising. The girl said resignedly that she understood everything. She thought, however, the truth is that it is possible to live much kinder. It is possible, but she did not know how to achieve this. When the fire mana first awakened in her, the flames got out of control and burned her dear friend. Anyone who approaches her risks getting burned. Naturally, she distanced herself from the people around her. But despite this, someone spoke to her, and it was Thor. There are good people, but he was not even afraid of her fire. Moreover, he told her that he would help her solve her problem. He was truly an amazing person. She understood why Mabel was so determined to side with this man. Obviously, good people get along well with each other. However, she could not be with these people while this flame was inside her. She did not notice how she spoke out loud. She realized that she was the daughter of an Ifrit family and would never do anything that could blacken her father's name. The general, hearing this, was surprised to note that this was true. He told her that their departure would take place tomorrow. Until then, she was free. The girl agreed with this. Evening came. Agnes thought sadly that the day after tomorrow she would not be in the castle of the Lord of Demons. The protagonist told her that he would find a way to suppress her flame, but time was short. She looked at the small storeroom and noted that this one amazing item was more than enough. Although no, even just the words that this young man told her were enough. Therefore, she did not need more. She should thank him when she saw him tomorrow. Thank him for thinking of her. Meanwhile, Rukia told Kelv that it seemed that the search for a suitable place for the protagonist was not going too well. The Chancellor objected to her. Finding something like that was not easy. They were talking about opening an alchemical workshop. In his case, he needed a place where he could easily find alchemical materials. Living within the castle, it was problematic to go outside to collect random materials and stones. But they had another problem. Both in the palace and in the cities, there were a lot of people everywhere. He was not sure that all of them would immediately accept him if he opened a workshop. Rukia admitted that he was right. It was still dangerous to suddenly introduce the protagonist to the general public. Thor had no prejudice against demons or non-humans, but the demon race was not used to humans. Kelv thought that a place with natural surroundings, where there were not many people, would be more suitable than the city. If only he had someone who could act as his protector, everything would be much easier. The Lord noted that she knew it was difficult, but she hoped that he would continue his search. The Chancellor said that he did. The Lord continued, regarding the general. Although she had told him that Thor was a guest and should not be treated rudely, Rysing's behavior was not polite. However, she, for her part, had already done all she could. The general had not harmed him, which meant that if he was punished only for rude words, there would be those who would be wary of the protagonist after that. And in that case, he won't be able to do what he wants. Consult with her, the ruler, and create magic items. They can't allow that. Is it really just a matter of finding a place for the protagonist outside the castle? No. This issue needs to be thought through carefully. She ordered Kelv to take care of the workshop for now. The Chancellor told her that he would do everything. The next day, Agnes came to the protagonist and greeted him. He smiled and thanked her for coming. At that moment, Mabel snuck up on her from behind, which scared her a little. Mabel apologized to her and said that she was the one who asked MC to take her with him. As a maid, she wanted to help him today. Agnes was surprised, that's how. The protagonist, looking at how Agnes tensed up from Mabel's touch, thought bitterly that she was still upset about Mabel's burn. Agnes told him that she came to say goodbye to him. He exclaimed in surprise, "Say goodbye?" She noted that it was so. Tomorrow, she and her father must return to their estate. Although he said that he would make an item for her to contain the flames, she did not think that he would have time to finish it before they left. Let him forgive her for everything turning out this way. The protagonist objected to her. He replied that the item was already ready. The girl incredulously stretched out. What did he say? Thor smiled at her and repeated that the item to suppress her flames was ready. He showed her the pendant. She could not believe her eyes. MC explained to her that it converted fire mana into mana of other attributes. Thus, when she wears it, it will weaken her fire mana. She herself will become flexible like wood, durable like earth, and strong like metal. And her skin will probably become shiny like water. Agnes couldn't believe it. He had created it so quickly. Thor continued that he was asking her to experiment with this pendant. Mabel was there to help her with it. The maid showed her the costume, smiling, and said that they had prepared clothes for her. She approached Agnes and asked her to take off her armor. Agnes exclaimed that it was impossible. She would burn her dress. She could hurt her again. Mabel told her soothingly that this was why Mr. Thor had made her this item. It was impossible to make a mistake in what he was doing. But Agnes was afraid. The protagonist told her not to worry. If something happened, he would immediately adjust the pendant, and he would recreate the item as many times as she needed. This was his sincere wish. Agnes thought with gratitude that he had always reassured her before when she was nervous and unsure, and she said decisively that if she left without trying it, she would definitely regret it for the rest of her life. Thor thought that he was much more afraid of this than she was, so he could only hope that it would work. Agnes held out her hand to him for the pendant, and said that she would like to use the pendant he had made for her. The protagonist gladly gave it to her. Waiting for the girls, he sat impatiently in the room. The salamanders were swarming around him. Suddenly, the floorboards creaked, and Agnes thanked him for his patience. Thor looked up and stared at her in amazement. There stood Agnes, in the outfit that Mabel had prepared for her. She said that she was very nervous. It had been a long time since she had worn anything other than armor. Didn't she look strange? The protagonist assured her with admiration that she looked very cute. She was embarrassed and confused by his words. No, this couldn't be true. Suddenly her pendant lit up. The system reported that fire mana imposes the effect energy plus 100%. Fire mana is divided into 5 attributes and is transformed into 5 types of mana. The protagonist noted that the pendant on the girl's neck was glowing. Right now, it was transforming her fire mana into mana of wood, metal, water, and other elements. He understood that the transformed mana of each attribute had its own special effect on the owner, and the pendant itself strengthened the health, body and mind of the owner. Agnes was shocked. Her skin was literally shining. The system showed the characteristics. The pendant transforms fire mana into earth mana. Earth effect stability 100%, transforms earth mana into metal mana. Metal effect strength 100%, transforms metal mana into water mana. Water effect flexibility plus 100%, transforms water mana into wood mana. Wood effect vitality plus 100%. Agnes spun around in delight and exclaimed that her whole body was so light. The salamanders were also happy for their favorite. Suddenly, the girl lifted off the floor and rose into the air, wondering what had happened. The protagonist explained to the girls that now all of Agnes's fire mana was being used to strengthen her body. It would take some time to get used to it, but at least the flames shouldn't burn her clothes or anything else. The girl spun around in the air, exclaiming in despair that it was dangerous. She wasn't wearing any underwear at all. Finally, she landed on the ground, holding the hem of her dress, and suddenly winked at the protagonist. Thor said sheepishly that he hadn't seen anything and that she should forgive him for that incident. She, not believing her happiness, replied that there was nothing to worry about. Everything was fine. The pendant on her neck began to shine again, and the system gave the result that her percentage had increased by 50. Agnes admitted to Thor that she was a little embarrassed when the pendant suddenly began to work. The protagonist explained to her that this was a side effect. He was pleased. In any case, the experiment was a success. The health-improving pendant worked. Mabel thanked him. He wondered why she was thanking him. The girl told him that now she could fulfill her long-standing wish. She also apologized to Agnes, jumped up to her, and hugged her. Agnes wanted to resist this. When her emotions were unsettled, a fire could start. Mabel, stroking her head, told her not to worry about it. She was always afraid, wasn't she? She lived with the thought that she risked burning others. Agnes was surprised at her insight. Mabel continued. Perhaps it was she who instilled this fear in her. She was very sorry. Agnes protested. It was not so. It was she who had burned her when they were children, because the mana awakened in her and she couldn't control it. And it was entirely her fault. She should be the one apologizing to Mabel. The friends continued to hug, enjoying the fact that they could be close again, like in childhood. Mabel remembered. She had apologized to her a lot back then. Did she remember that? But if she hadn't cried then, if she hadn't run away, Agnes would have accepted her abilities more calmly. Agnes was indignant with tears in her eyes. It was all wrong. It was her fault. Mabel told her that it was all over now. Her heat wouldn't hurt anyone anymore. Now she could become like everyone else, right? Agnes, in a fit of gratitude, said her name and thanked her for everything. The girl burst into tears from emotion. The system was malfunctioning. Her mana went out of control from her crying, but the pendant worked as it should and stabilized everything. The girls were scared at first, and then burst out laughing. The protagonist watched them with delight. He wanted to go and leave them, but Mabel extended her hand to him and told him that now it was his turn. He wondered, what was she talking about? The girl asked him to hug Agnes too. Agnes became embarrassed and began to object. Why was she saying that? Thor was not obliged to do this. Mabel wisely answered her that she should use any opportunity to establish communication with people. Agnes embarrassedly suggested that what if the protagonist does not like this? Then he will be unpleasant. Mabel turned to the protagonist and asked him if he did not like the idea of hugging Agnes. He grinned and told her that he did not think so. He considered this question unfair. But MC understood that the girl was not fully dressed, so he had to hug her carefully and not tightly. At that moment, the general was looking for Agnes. He shouted his daughter's name, wondering where she could have disappeared to. Then he realized that she could be found in the bathhouse. She must be somewhere here. When he entered, he did not immediately understand that the protagonist was going to hug her. He joyfully exclaimed, "There she was." When he realized what was happening, the general first asked the protagonist in bewilderment what he was doing. Thor, smiling, answered him that it was difficult to explain, but he would still try. Reincarnation did not even let him finish speaking. He turned purple with anger and shouted what he was doing to his daughter. Mabel stood up for the protagonist. She indignantly demanded that he stop. He growled for her to get out of the way. She told him that she would not move from the spot. Mr. Thor is her benefactor, and he helped Agnes too. The general's daughter cowered in fear. He pushed the protagonist away from her and told him to step aside. He would take him to his estate. There, he would pay for all the crimes he had committed against his daughter. The protagonist asked him to listen to what he had to say first. The general growled fiercely for him to shut his mouth. He prepared to attack his daughter's offender. Thor noted that he was too fast. Mabel would not be able to react. He remembered their conversation. He then asked Mabel what she could say about the general. What kind of person was he? The girl then answered him that he was very protective of his daughter. Well, and of course, he was also a strong warrior. There is a legend that once on the battlefield he pierced as many as 100 people with his fiery spear. And now the protagonist understood that such a legendary warrior and all his strength was against him. But at that moment, Agnes resolutely stood in front of the general and stopped him, telling him to listen to her now. The protagonist was surprised. She stopped him with one hand. The general stared at her in confusion and exclaimed her name. The system immediately brought up her stats, which were stable. He said in disbelief. She had curbed her mana. The pendant on the girl's neck shone with a bright light. The general was perplexed. What had happened to her? Her eyes lit up with a bright fiery light. Her stats had increased to plus 250%. She answered him in an icy tone that the protagonist had done everything possible for her. Risenga could not believe what was happening. Agnes added that now, only thanks to him, she could wear normal clothes. He noticed this only now and was even more surprised. She was wearing clothes now, not armor. MC told him that he was an alchemist. So when he heard what had happened to Agnes, he thought that he should come up with a solution to her problem. Thor noted that it was good that he had managed to explain himself right away. But the general ignored reason. He hissed at the protagonist that he saw. He tricked his daughter into wearing these clothes. Thor didn't expect him to turn everything upside down like that. Risenga growled. He told his daughter that this was a fabric that could withstand flames, and under this pretext to undress her. He was a bastard, and his patience was at an end. The general exclaimed, "Let him see." He activated his firepower, which, needless to say, was truly terrifying. The protagonist wondered what kind of person he was. The general, meanwhile, exclaimed that this was the flame of the fire general. He would not leave him a chance to escape. The protagonist had to activate the flame storage. In the blink of an eye, all the firepower of Agnes's father was placed in the storage, leaving only smoke around the general. His amazement knew no bounds. Where did his flame go? He looked at the protagonist and asked him, who the hell was he? Thor said that he was an alchemist under the command of Her Majesty the Demon Lord. His goal was to solve the problems of the people of her lands and make them a better place to live. That was why he had figured out how to solve Agnes's magic problem. That was all. The general grinned maliciously. The protagonist continued. He knew that the general didn't care. He wouldn't believe him. But let him at least listen to him. Mabel called out to Rising reproachfully. But this blockhead still didn't want to understand what had happened. He growled that he would get the main character anyway. He would make him talk. He wouldn't back down from this. He wanted to attack Thor again, but this time Agnes stood in front of him. She grabbed her father's hands and shouted at him to stop. The general flared up. Let him go. He was doing this for her own good. At that moment, something incredible happened. Agnes lifted her father into the air like a feather. Both Thor and Mabel and the general himself were speechless with amazement. Finally, when Risenga gained the ability to speak, he exclaimed, "What is this? How did she get such power?" Agnes answered him, "It's all because she is angry. And that's why she's using mana now." The general couldn't believe his ears. Is she angry? But where is her fire? After all, it should flare up when her emotions take over. The girl with a shining pendant on her neck answered him that thanks to Thor, she had tamed her flames. The protagonist realized that all her magic was transformed by the health enhancement pendant. From it, she drew life energy, flexibility, and strength that were several times greater than her own. Enough power to block the general's movements. Meanwhile, Agnes continued to explain to her father that her fire could only harm others, but now she could use it to protect the people she loved. Her father could not believe his ears. She continued that it was Thor who had helped her gain the power of the primordial flame. Thanks to him, she realized everything. Risenga was perplexed by her words. She couldn't say that. What was she even saying? The system immediately let her know that Agnes' emotions were raging. The mana of fire gave her plus 400% life force. The girl sternly told her father that he simply had to apologize to the protagonist. The protagonist, watching what was happening in surprise, asked Mabel if she knew a legend about a hero who lifted a dragon. The girl answered that she knew one. In it, the hero crawled under the belly of a dragon and lifted its enormous body. Thor confessed to her. He thought it was a bit much even for a hero, but perhaps it was true. Meanwhile, Risenga answered his daughter that he would do as she asked him. He would apologize to him. He swears to her on the name of the general. The girl continued to hold him in the air and he asked her to let him go. When everyone calmed down a little, Agnes thoughtfully told her father everything again. In the end, she summarized that this is why the protagonist made a flame-suppressing item for her. That's how it was. He completely misunderstood everything. The general looked confused and stupid. Agnes showed him the pendant on her neck and added that this is the very item that suppresses her flames. It converts her fire mana into other types of mana. It is called the Health Enhancement Pendant. Risenga was surprised at what she said. Agnes noticed that now the ordinary clothes that Mabel gave her do not burn on her. The general turned to the protagonist. He asked him if it was true what his daughter said. Thor answered that he could see it himself. Agnes said that thanks to this item, she can again wear beautiful dresses that she could only dream of until now, and he went and attacked Thor. So he was responding to his help to her? The general felt guilty. He was sorry that he had treated Agnes's benefactor so rudely, even out of ignorance, but he was so ashamed of himself. He did not think that someone, a complete stranger, would be so kind to her. It turned out that Thor was a very kind person. Tears appeared in his eyes. The protagonist was amazed. What was this? Was he crying because of his daughter? The general really burst into tears. He was upset. Thor, for the sake of his daughter's happiness, was even ready to oppose him, her father. So great was his desire to help others. How stupid he was compared to him. The protagonist, listening to his words, was surprised. Is this what people call fatherly love? Rigus continued that everyone calls him the General of Flame, but he is not even able to discern the true nature of people. How could he be so blind? Agnes also listened to her father with tears in her eyes. The protagonist noted that if he was ready to listen to him from the very beginning, everything would have ended long ago. The general resolutely said that since he was so blind, he would simply squeeze out his worthless eyes. Agnes called out to him anxiously. The protagonist ran up to the general, took his hands away from his eyes, and told him not to do it. Blinding himself was completely unnecessary. He was going to stay in the lands of the Demon Lord, and it would hurt him every time he saw his wound. He would blame himself for it. The general exhaled and noted that he understood everything. Thor asked him not to blame himself too much. He didn't know that Agnes had curbed her powers. It's clear that he immediately noticed her change clothes and thought too much, but he couldn't have guessed about the flames either. MC realized that the general really cared about his daughter. Anyone would understand this just by looking at them. He's definitely not one of those parents who see their children as just a tool. He's a much better father than many. The protagonist even envied them. He suggested that the general start their relationship from scratch. Rigus told him that he would follow his advice, but he would also report his mistake to Her Majesty, and he would also report to her what he and Agnes owed him. That was the best he could do for him. The protagonist assured him that everything was fine, he shouldn't worry about it. The general remarked that he would like to repay him for what he had done for his daughter. What would he like? Thor wondered. A reward? Well then, let him help him find alchemical materials.